RV to take a short rest. Because it was the first night they spent in Bafang village for safety reasons, except for Yi Yu and others who went out to clean up the zombies and Brother Pai and others who cleaned up the small building, the rest of the people drove the car into the yard of a small walled country villa. The yard was quite large, and it was obvious that before the end of the world, the owner of the yard was also a wealthy man. There were 3 or 4 luxury cars parked in the garage alone, and the wall was quite high, the kind that no matter how hard the zombies jumped, they couldn't get in. The remaining people drove several cars, and together with the RV that Su brought with her, they filled the yard. Then, after Brother Pai arranged people to keep watch, everyone locked the iron gate of the yard and slept in their own cars all night. When it was late at night, thinking that Brother Pai and the others had cleaned up the house, Su got out of the RV again, left the yard, and walked to the house that Brother Pai had cleaned up under the cover of darkness and began her part of the renovation. They were a little rushed in terms of time, but they were now in the wilderness where dangers abounded, unlike in the safe zone. Except for the pregnant Su, no one dared to close their eyes and sleep deeply. Su in the RV naturally couldn't sleep too deeply or comfortably, so she took the initiative to get up and work without Brother Pai knocking on the door. She took some time to cover the walls and floors of the small building with a thick layer of ice. Rice and meat were stored in the freezer, and any food she found in the future could also be stored in the freezer. Even though the conditions in Bafang village are a bit difficult now, as long as the environment is made safe and the fussy Father Su is brought over, he will naturally think of renovating the water tank in the villa, and so on. Before Father Su comes, Li Xia, Junjiu, and others will have to endure it for a few days. After finishing the freezer, it was already early morning. To celebrate the good start in the new territory, Brother Pai and his gang of good cooks prepared a simple meal for everyone. Then everyone took a break and did a brief tidying up in case of any unexpected situations. No one slept well on the first night in Bafang village, and Yi Yu and his friends didn't even close their eyes. After hurriedly coming back to have breakfast, they drove out again. After another whole day of cleaning, they finally finished searching the front half of Bafang village one by one. It was estimated that if they went further, they would reach Bafang Villa. Yu took advantage of the cover of night to return and planned to explore Bafang Villa the next day. After a night's rest, on the next day, Yu's men continued to patrol the back half of Bafang village looking for zombies. Su had finished working on the freezer and had nothing to do, so she was bored, so she took her saber and drove with Yu to see Bafang Villa. It is quite naive to walk from the village entrance to Bafang Villa. Bafang Villa is located in the center of the village, on the only hill in Bafang village. Looking up from a distance, you can see a manor with high walls surrounded by lush trees. That is Bafang Villa. There are 2 ways to go up to the villa. One is to climb the stairs directly up, and the other is to drive around the hill to reach the parking lot behind Bafang Villa. Su decided to take a walk to exercise her leg strength, so she asked Yu to park the car on the parking lot below the steps. With her belly as big as a small ball, she walked up to Bafang Villa step by step and took the opportunity to observe the environment around Bafang Villa. After a while, Yu locked the car door, put on his 2 sabers, took out a backpack of supplies from the trunk, took 2 or 3 steps up the stairs, and caught up with Su. He stretched out his hand and was about to help Su up the stairs, but Su waved her hand, rejecting Yu's kindness, and said without blushing or panting, "Climbing stairs more often will help with a normal birth. Don't help me, let me do it myself." Okay, go slowly. If you can't climb anymore, I'll carry you up." Yu had been guarding Su's side, cautiously afraid that Su would accidentally roll down the stairs. However, Su tilted her head, looked at the pious expression on Yu's face, smiled, and said, "Yu, I'm beginning to think that you would be a good father." Hey. As if he had been praised, Yu smiled while scratching his head a little embarrassedly. He looked like a young man who had just begun to fall in love, very innocent. Seeing that the 2 were almost done climbing the stairs and standing in the dark green shade of the trees, they could just see the open gate of the villa. The gate, with its quaint shape and rivets, was ajar, and there were many bloodstains on the door. The dark and depressing atmosphere was like a horror movie with horror music, which made Su feel extremely depressed. She was just about to remind you that there might be high-level zombies or some other mutated plants or animals in here. Suddenly, a pale, skinny, peeling, dirty hand with black and red nails appeared in the gap of the half-open door. With a creaky sound, the heavy door was opened, and a zombie crawled out from it. Be careful, it's a level 2 zombie. Its fingernails are poisonous. Su whispered something and stopped climbing the stairs. She and Yiyu had been mentally prepared for this. On the surface, Bafong Villa was a tourist attraction, so there couldn't be no tourists here. Where there were tourists, there were zombies. But Su looked at the zombie crawling on the ground, and it seemed to be a level 2 zombie with poor mobility. This level 2 zombie looked quite disgusting, with long hair dragging on the ground, emitting a strong stench. Its eyes were like those of a hound staring at two preys. Although the skin on its face was a lot damaged, one could still vaguely make out a human figure. It was wearing dirty clothes stained with blood and looked exactly like a doomsday version of Sadako. Because it had been upgraded to a level 2 zombie, its head was unusually large and bulging like a steamed bun that had gone bad during fermentation. As soon as it crawled out of the door, it lay motionless on the ground, with its two hands bent in strange shapes on the ground. Yiyu pushed Su behind him, and a circular wall of fire rose around the two of them. But just as the wall of fire rose, the level 2 zombie raised its head and spit out a string of white ice cones from its mouth, shooting straight at Yiyu. Someone with superpowers. Yiyu sneered, but was not surprised. He had seen level 2 zombies with superpowers in the Zombie Tied into City. So he turned around, held Su and took 2 steps to avoid the ice cone, then turned around and threw a ball of fire at the level 2 zombie. At the same time, Su pushed her palm in the direction of the level 2 zombie. Following the same pattern, a string of ice cones flew out from her palm and went directly towards the level 2 zombie. Because of its poor mobility, the level 2 zombie might not have had very convenient legs before the end of the world, so it had no time to dodge the fire and ice. Yiyu's fireball and Su's ice cones were thrown at it one after another. Its whole body turned red and white, and then it continued to spit ice cones at Su and Yiyu as if nothing had happened. Oh, this level 2 zombie's defense is pretty good. Yiyu said this nonchalantly, and Su laughed behind Yiyu. She looked up and seemed to hear a burst of irregular footsteps. She looked up and saw a group of level 1 zombies running out from behind the level 2 zombie with good defense. Each of them was as mobile as an adult and not slow. She raised her eyebrows, and her hair rose up under the temperature of the flame, and a road made of ice spikes was paved towards the gate. Seeing this, Yu stopped thinking about sending a signal to call his teammates and released a fire dragon from the air. The group of level 1 zombies that ran out, including the level 2 zombie hiding behind the level 1 zombie, were burned beyond recognition, almost turning into African zombies. Even so, everyone turned into black African zombies. These level 1 zombies were not dead yet, and the level 2 zombies were not dead at all. Su raised the ice spikes on the ground a little more, and those level 1 zombies were like skewers, stuck on the ice spikes and unable to move. She stretched out her hand, and several thin water snakes flew out, with cones made of ice on their heads. The cones spun and pounced directly on the level 1 zombies stuck on the ice spikes, drilling into their foreheads, trying to take out the crystal cores in the brains of these level 1 zombies. Yu freed up his hands and concentrated on dealing with the level 2 zombie. He felt that Su's ice spikes were blocking his way, so he walked around it and pulled out the 2 sabers behind him. The sabers were carrying a gust of hot fire, and he engaged in close combat with the level 2 zombie. In fact, although this level 2 zombie has superpowers and its defense is also very good, its mobility is really poor, which makes its superpowers go to waste. Yiyu moved swiftly with a gust of hot wind, jumping around continuously, and caused a lot of damage to the level 2 zombie in just 2 or 3 moves. But before Su could take out all the crystal cores in the brains of the level 1 zombies stuck on the ice spikes, a large group of ordinary zombies staggered out from the ancient and heavy door. Maybe those ordinary zombies moved more slowly, so the level 2 zombies and the level 1 zombies had been fighting for a while before they slowly staggered to the gate. At the same time, he released a flame into the door, imitating Su Su's ice spike road, and directly paved a road made of fire for the ordinary zombies. Those ordinary zombies were burned to death by Yi Yu before they even walked out of the gate. Their bodies fell into the raging fire and were gradually burnt and turned into ashes. As soon as Yi Yu's flames were extinguished, he stepped forward, holding a saber, and directly picked up the crystal cores in the black ashes. Su Su had also finished taking the crystal cores of the first-level zombies at this time. She grabbed the handful of washed first-level crystal cores in her hand and looked at them in the warm sunlight. Each one was the size of a marble and exuded a crystal luster. It was really beautiful. According to the energy contained, such a first-level crystal core can be exchanged for 100 ordinary crystal cores, and the level 2 crystal core that you dug out from the brain of the level 2 zombie can be exchanged for 1,000 ordinary crystal cores. Crystal cores will be the universal currency in the future base, and can also be directly absorbed by psychics and used as blue medicine to replenish consumed psychics. Although a conversion table for various levels of crystal cores is currently provided in Lu Yin's safe zone, the table only states how to convert level 1 crystal cores and ordinary crystal cores, and does not specify how many ordinary crystal cores a level 2 crystal core can be exchanged for. It seems that Lu Yin doesn't have many level 2 crystal cores. It's so big. Yi Yu tossed the diamond-shaped, thumb-length, level 2 crystal core in his hand, turned around, threw the level 2 crystal core to Su Su, and said, "I can't eat this, it's too hard to chew. You keep it for me. I have a few more level 2 crystal cores, I'll give them to you later. You keep all the crystal cores that I can't eat in the future. Where do I collect it?" Su Su reached out and took the level 2 crystal core that Yi Yu threw over. She searched her pockets up and down, frowned, and said to Yi Yu, "You haven't learned how to absorb the crystal core yet? It's too troublesome. It's more convenient to eat." Yi Yu waved his hand and burned the level 1 zombies in front of Su Su. He turned around and went straight into the gate of Bafong Villa. Seeing a few ordinary zombies staggering towards him not far away, he solved them as well. Su Su followed behind Yi Yu, holding the level 2 crystal core tightly in her palm. She really wanted to ask Yi Yu if he ate ordinary crystal cores and level 1 crystal cores like candy beans, would it really have no effect on his stomach? Many superpowers now don't need to be taught at all. They can absorb crystal cores by just trying, such as Xia Yaoshi. Why are Yi Yu and his group still eating crystal cores now? The energy in ordinary crystal cores and level 1 crystal cores can't satisfy the energy recovery of superpowers at all. Just like when playing games, the player level has been improved, and the little red and blue naturally can't fill the red and blue bars. When the time comes and they have to fight to the death, they will eat a lot of ordinary crystal cores and level 1 crystal cores, and their mouths will burst, but they may not be able to replenish half of their supernatural energy. What should they do then? Su Su thought that after this busy period, she still had to find a suitable time to explain to Yi Yu and his group how to absorb crystal cores. Otherwise, the gap between Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi's group would become larger and larger. Thinking so, when Su Su entered the Bafong Villa, she found that the villa was not as quaint as she had imagined. It was more like a parent-child playground. The villa was very large, with mountains, lakes, fields, squares, a small hotel, a courtyard, corridors, small pavilions, and a small auditorium that were specially made to look old. Supermarkets, chess and card rooms, billiard rooms, internet cafes, and KTVs are all set up in these small pavilions. There is also a cooking camp with 2 rows of stoves for tourists who come to enjoy the farm stay. Opposite the cooking camp is a large vegetable garden that provides food for the farm stay. This vegetable garden is somewhat different from the vegetable gardens grown by villagers. Because it is open to the public, the vegetable garden is very neatly maintained. The road surface is paved with cement, and the rectangular vegetable plots are piled high to form cement platforms. The vegetables in them also grow very neatly, one by one, as if they were planted at measured distances. Yi Yu, how many crystal cores can we get by selling these vegetables to Lu Yin's safe zone? Su Su sighed as she looked at the large vegetable garden in front of her. She began to think in her mind that Brother Pai's people must have been picking vegetables. The vegetables from Bafong Village plus the vegetables from Bafong Villa. Once this crop of vegetables is harvested, She doesn't know how high the crystal cores that are exchanged will pile up. I don't know, probably quite a few. Yi was not very interested in the vegetable business. He walked around Su Su and then helped Su Su to continue to visit Bafong Villa. After they walked through the entire villa until they could not find any zombies anymore, it was almost noon, so they left the villa and drove towards the village entrance. Although Bafong Villa was well designed, it was filled with broken limbs and even human organs. There was a lot of garbage floating in the lake, and the hotel was covered with a thick layer of dust. It would take several days to clean up such an environment, and it would be uninhabitable. Moreover, there is one bad thing about living in the countryside. That is, there are too many messy mutant animals and the danger is too great. The risk factor is much higher than living in the city. Although zombies are easy to deal with, the reproductive capacity of mutant animals is too strong. A large group of densely packed and large mutant animals will crush you at any time. The reason why Su Su stationed an armed force here and let this armed force clean up the site first is precisely because of this threat. They drove to the entrance of the village. Brother Pai and others had already set up the pots and started cooking. Soy sauce, seasonings, vegetable oil, etc. were all collected from a nearby country villa. There was no need to worry about these cooking supplies in a place like this. The vegetables were also freshly picked from the fields. They just melted a piece of ice, washed them, and tasted very fresh. In the new nest at the entrance of the village, Su Su and the others had a simple meal and walked around. At night, they found a farmer's house with a relatively clean environment to rest. Because she had informed Su's father and mother before, she didn't need to go back for the next few days, and it was okay for her and Yu to stay outside for a few more days. This bedroom was decorated in a rather high-end style. It was obvious that the owner was a wealthy person who knew how to enjoy life. The European-style decoration also showed the owner's luxury. However, Su Su lay on the bed in the bedroom and could not fall asleep. She thought that because she had changed the environment and was not familiar with it, she could not even have a light sleep. Then Su Su simply did not sleep, got up from the bed, and began to cultivate her spirit. Just as she was cultivating happily, outside the country villa, in the villa belonging to the special forces, King Kong was in the pain of having no desire to live. At this moment, he was drinking with a scholar, the fortune teller and Li Xia. It was already dark. The coffee table in front of King Kong was filled with raw peanuts. The four of them were cracking peanuts while comforting King Kong. King Kong, as the saying goes, there are beautiful women everywhere in the world, so why should you love them alone, right? While persuading him, the scholar opened another bottle of beer for King Kong out of pain. He was the one who crammed these boxes of beer into the truck. There would be no more beer after they were finished. Next time he wanted to drink more, he would have to brew it himself. He had originally thought that one day when everyone was in a good mood, they would drink and sing together, so this time he gave it all to King Kong. King Kong grabbed the beer bottle handed over by the scholar and drank it. At the same time, Yu walked into the villa with a smug look on his face. When King Kong saw the perfect expression on Yu's face, he thought of his own unhappy love life. He was so angry that he stood up with his sleeves rolled up and shouted at Yu, "Yi Ba Pai, your grandfather is in a bad mood now. You beast with a woman and children. Get out of my sight." "Oh, you're so angry." Yu stood there, clenched his fists provocatively, and said without showing any weakness, "You can't handle Zhushijia, so you're angry with me, right? Come on, let me teach you a lesson and give you a good beating." This was a common opening remark. Normally, if King Kong heard Yu's words, he would have immediately dropped the beer bottle in his hand and rushed towards Yu, howling. But today was different. He stared at Yu blankly, then shook his head and said drunkenly, "Let you go, let you go. Grandpa is not in the mood today." Looking at his appearance, he was really hurt by Zhushijia. Yu is in a perfect moment in his life recently. He feels relaxed all over. Seeing that King Kong clearly didn't want to fight with him, Yu walked over and sat down next to King Kong. The scholar opened a bottle of wine for him, but Yu blocked it with his hand and said with a smile, "No, I'm going to accompany my woman and my daughter in a while. I'm afraid I'll do something crazy if I drink." "Oh my God." King Kong, who was just in the midst of a breakup, felt sour after hearing this and shouted in a weird tone, "You're still drunk and acting recklessly? Did Su let you act recklessly? Yiba Pai, you're only capable of bragging. Don't worry about whether I can do whatever I want." Yu acted like an experienced person, crossed his legs, hooked one hand around King Kong's neck, leaned over, patted King Kong's shoulder sympathetically, and said, "King Kong, why are you so indecisive about this matter between you and Zhuo Shijia? Does Zhuo Shijia like you or not?" Dr. Zhuo said, "She has a husband." "Where's her husband?" King Kong was suddenly stunned. Yes, he had been sad for a long time. "Where is her husband?" "Well, I haven't seen her husband for a long time." "Is it the end of the world? Her husband got separated from her?" "You know it's the end of the world now, so who knows whether her husband is alive, dead, or turned into a zombie." Yu nodded with an understanding expression, took back his hand on King Kong's shoulder, and stretched out his hand to grab in the air, teaching King Kong, "Nowadays, it's natural to strike first. If Zhuo Shijia's husband comes to you in the future, you've already done what you want. Zhuo Shijia is your woman, and no one can take her away from you." Yu gave King Kong this bad idea because he thought he had experience. Now he has a woman and a child. One gets one free. His life is so perfect. Naturally, he can stand from the perspective of a life mentor and educate King Kong, a junior with no experience. King Kong lowered his eyes, thinking as if he was learning something. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead, and with a drunken face, as if he had suddenly realized something, he said loudly, "Just now I was so sad that I didn't expect that Dr. Zhuo's husband might have died or turned into a zombie. Brother, you are right. Let's make this matter a done deal. Then just ask her directly whether she likes you or not." The scholar at the side couldn't stand it anymore. He was confused by King Kong and pointed to the moonlit sky outside. He said, "Look, it's a dark and windy night. It's a good time to confess. Go out and ask Zhuo Shijia now. If she likes you, don't hesitate. It doesn't matter if she has a husband or not. If she doesn't like you, okay, there are better fish in the sea. Brothers will find you a better one. I think Dr. Jun is a good one." Speaking of Junjiu, Li Xia, who was sitting opposite the scholar, raised her eyelids and was about to say that Su Xiaofeng might be interested in Junjiu, but she didn't know what she thought of and didn't say it out loud. The fortune teller agreed with the scholar's suggestion and nodded, voting for Junjiu. "I think Dr. Jun is not bad. She is young, beautiful, and lively, and she is also youthful and beautiful. I want Zhuo Shijia." King Kong's face was red. He stood up and swayed, then yelled at his brothers, "What, Dr. Jun? I want Zhuo Shijia." "Then go ahead. Go ask Zhuo Shijia right now whether he likes it or not. 2 words or 3. Yi raised his foot with an impatient look on his face, shouted loudly, and kicked King Kong in the ace. King Kong immediately pounced forward, flipped over the coffee table, and fell flat on the carpet. Yi Yu and a few others immediately laughed without any conscience. King Kong was provoked by these brothers and pounded the floor angrily, then stood up and went to find Zhuo Shijia. Zhuo Shijia, Junjiu, and Wu Daomei were cleaning a small clinic. The clinic was a building. The first floor was designed by the locals to look like a storefront, with transparent floor-to-ceiling glass and red words on the glass. And Kangtai Diagnosis and Treatment Center, medical insurance cards accepted. The first floor of the clinic is where medicine is sold. One wall is filled with Chinese medicine cabinets, one wall is filled with Western medicine cabinets, and one wall is filled with veterinary medicine on the shelves. On the second floor, there are several rows of brand new blue leather chairs, which look like they can be used for intravenous strips. Then there are rooms which are also very large. There are some hardware equipment for nebulization and 2 or 3 beds. The third floor is the doctor's office and some equipment for routine blood tests. There was a doctor's office with a label gynecology on the door. There was an operating table inside and a brand new, most advanced color ultrasound machine next to the operating table. Walking along gynecology, there were internal medicine, surgery, physical therapy, and that was it. This small clinic is located at the entrance of the village, blocked by 1 or 2 country villas. It is estimated that the owner of this clinic has no intention of opening to the public. He only needs to deal with the common headaches and fevers in Bafong village, so he has not thought about looking for a good geographical location. In addition, it has only been opened for a short time, and many things inside are new. Zhuo Shijia and the other two were wiping the blood off the counter on the first floor and taking the opportunity to count the medicines on the first floor. King Kong stumbled to the outside of the clinic and stood in the dim streetlights. He looked at Zhuo Shijia's busy figure in the brightly lit small clinic. His throat tightened, and he shouted, "Dr. Zhuo, please come out for a moment. I have something urgent to discuss with you." He said this a little hastily, as if something serious had happened. Zhuo Shijia quickly put down the rag in her hand and turned back to find her medicine box. Junjiu and Wu Daomei also ran out. King Kong quickly waved his hand to drive away the two light bulbs and said in a rough voice, "You two go back, go back. I'm going to find Zhuo Shijia. Don't interfere with my confession." "Confession?" She smiled and nodded, saying, "Oh, okay, ha ha ha." The two of them turned around and went back. Zhuo Shijia happened to run out with her medicine box. She also heard what King Kong said and stood there in a daze. Junjiu took the medicine box back for her and winked. "Dr. Zhuo, someone wants to confess to you, so we won't bother you anymore." After saying that, Junjiu and Wu Daomei walked back to the clinic laughingly. However, Zhuo Shijia was still standing at the door, looking at King Kong outside with a frown and tilted his head as if he was thinking about something. King Kong, who was covered in the light of a street lamp, turned around and walked away. He walked 2 steps back and waved to Zhuo Shijia. "Come here. I have something to ask you." Zhuo Shijia took 1 or 2 steps forward hesitantly. Her movements were a little slow, and King Kong became anxious seeing this. He turned around, took 2 quick steps towards Zhuo Shijia, grabbed her hand, and walked towards a dark country villa next to them. This building had been cleaned up by them during the day, and there were no zombies inside. King Kong pushed the door open and walked in quickly with Zhuo Shijia. He pushed her to the sofa on the first floor, sat in front of Zhuo Shijia, and asked in the dark, "Dr. Zhuo, I just want to ask you one question. Do you like me? Are you willing to be my wife and give birth to a son for me?" The light outside the window, accompanied by the moonlight, gently flowed into the living room. Zhuo Shijia sat up straight on the sofa, looking at King Kong sitting on the coffee table opposite, without saying a word. She was silent for a long time. King Kong couldn't wait that long. Just as he was about to open his mouth to repeat his question, he heard Zhuo Shijia say faintly, "Do you know how my husband died?"
"Huh?
"Your husband is dead?" Hearing this, without noticing the resentment in Zhuo Shijia's tone, King Kong was overjoyed. He groped his way forward and was about to carry out what you said and make it a done deal with Zhuo Shijia. However, Zhuo Shijia blocked him, pushed King Kong, and continued, "I pushed him down the stairs and he died. Before the end of the world."
Why?
Bad relationship? Jin Gang began to feel that Zhuo Shijia's words were a little wrong. He sat back, slapped his forehead, and suddenly realized, "No wonder when I first met you, you said you were just out of the police station and got involved with Brother Pai. You were arrested for killing your husband before the end of the world? Then, do you know why I killed him? Your husband is having an affair?"
No.
Zhuo Shijia smiled and shook her head. The smile on her face was a little bitter. She stretched out her hands and rubbed her face. The color of her face looked particularly pale under the street lights outside the window. Seeing that King Kong was looking at her intently and seemed to be listening very attentively, Zhuo Shijia shook her head again, folded her thin arms with her hands, curled up in the sofa, lowered her eyes, and thought carefully about how to organize the language to tell King Kong about the problems between her and her husband. "I am 31 years old this year. When I was 20 years old and still in college, I became a couple with my husband. We had a good relationship. In the first few years of our marriage, we lived in love and were envied by others. But as we grew older and our parents passed away, we both longed to have a child of our own. At first, we didn't care, but gradually, because we couldn't have children, we had more complaints and less communication. In the darkness, Zhuo Shijia, with her back to the silver moonlight, softly talked about the problems she had encountered. A child is a bond between two people. If a family does not have a child, it will lose a lot of fun. Over time, it will also cause poor communication between the couple. Of course, this only applies to those families who long for children. King Kong tilted his head, sitting in the shadow, listening to Zhuoshijia very seriously, with a puzzled look on his face. Seeing that Zhuoshijia had finished speaking, King Kong patted his thigh and was about to speak when Zhuoshijia spoke again. I've heard you say that you just want to live a stable and comfortable life and just want to marry a wife and have a son, so I don't think we are suitable for each other. She didn't know whether she could have a baby. She had done a lot of tests over the years, and there was nothing wrong with her and her husband. They had both tried a lot of Chinese and Western medicine, but they just couldn't have a baby. Therefore, Zhuoshijia felt that she and King Kong, who was determined to get married and have a son, were not meant to be together, so why bother trying? She had already been married once, and was more realistic about relationships. Before she said whether she liked him or not, she had to consider whether he was suitable. But King Kong patted his thigh again, waved his hand, and said heroically, "It's okay. It's okay, if you don't have children. Let's adopt a few. Didn't you pick up so many babies? I'll adopt them all. You will be the mother, and I will be the father. It's decided." Now in the Apple Villa district, in addition to Pigo's son Su Lei, Dai Chun, and Zhou Xiaolin's daughter, there are 8 babies without parents. King Kong is going to adopt all of them. Zhuoshijia smiled for no reason and shook his head. "Thank you for your kindness. Being a parent is not that easy. For me, this life is very good. I don't want to cause any trouble, and I don't want to change anything. Everyone can say nice things. Before a man coaxes a woman to bed, he will make all kinds of promises." Now King Kong says he wants to adopt 8 babies with her, but is raising a child as simple as just talking? There are also all kinds of illnesses and fevers of the children, which is very stressful. In addition, it is the end of the world now, and life is already trivial and difficult. After fighting for her life, she still has to deal with the crying of the children. Zhuoshijia feels that a man as careless as King Kong can only live this fresh life for 2 days. Once the novelty is gone, he will be like her husband, complaining about her everywhere and disliking her everywhere. After saying that, Zhuoshijia stood up and prepared to leave the dark villa. King Kong hurriedly stood up, stretched out his hand to grab Zhuoshijia's wrist, and said anxiously, "Dr. Zhuo, I know you don't trust me, and think I'm one of those frivolous people out there who makes promises without thinking. It doesn't matter. Time will prove everything. Let's take it slow." Zhuoshijia turned around and was about to speak when King Kong let go of her hand, strode forward, held his head high, and walked out of the house. He had just made a lifelong promise to Zhuoshijia. The promise sounded light, but King Kong knew that he would have to spend his entire life to fulfill it. But it doesn't matter, Zhuoshijia is worth it. At the same time, Yu also returned to Su Su's place and gently opened the door. He originally thought that Su Su's breath was so quiet, but he saw her sitting cross-legged in the dark, with her eyes closed, as if she was practicing some incredible magic skills. There was a silver-white breath surrounding her body. Yu was a little stunned, not knowing when to make progress. Didn't it say in the novels that when masters are practicing some magical skills, they are most afraid of being disturbed? If they are disturbed, they will go crazy and have various heart meridians broken. Yi was afraid that if he acted rashly, Su Su would go crazy. What should he do?
Come in.
Su Su closed her eyes, looking extremely sophisticated, with the soles of her feet pressed against her bulging belly in a pregnant woman's yoga pose. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind as the silver and white energies of water and ice entangled her. Yi Yu, who was outside the door, immediately entered the room and did not forget to close the door. He sat down next to Su Su quietly and asked cautiously, "Master, are you going to teach me your unique martial arts? You've read too many meaningless novels." Su Su opened her eyes and looked at Yi Yu, who was sitting next to her with a serious look on his face. She raised her hand, patted Yi Yu on the forehead, laughed, and said, "I am cultivating my spirit." "Practice? Spirit?" Yi Yu tilted his head, not understanding what Su Su was talking about. Su didn't know how to explain to Yu, so she waved her hand, asking Yu to come closer, then placed her palm on Yu's forehead and said, "It's the thing in the zombies' brains. Psychics also have it. The zombies are called crystal cores, and the psychics are called spirit essences. They are both a carrier of energy. What kind of spirit is this in the brain? Not necessarily. Some are in the brain, and some are not." Su took back her hand that was on Yu's forehead, propped it on the side of her cheek, bit her lip, and continued, "You have to find it yourself, and after you find it, you can make it grow yourself." Many years after the end of the world, a base issued a research report saying that there is something called essence in the body of people with special abilities. The so-called essence is actually a crystal core. However, in order to distinguish them from zombies and those mutated animals and plants, and to make people with special abilities appear particularly different, the authorities called the energy carrier in the body of people with special abilities the essence. Generally speaking, the crystal cores of zombies and mutated animals are in their brains, and the crystal cores of mutated plants are in their roots, but the souls of people with special powers are more difficult to find. The human body is so big that the souls can be hidden anywhere and wander around. Those with special powers can decide for themselves where to put their own souls, and of course they can also find out where the souls in other people's bodies are. Lantern Festival. Aren't you guys going out to play? It's so boring just sitting around me. Just now, Su put her hand on Yu's forehead, just to find out if there was any spirit in Yu's brain, but in the end, she thought about it and decided not to do so. Why was she trying to find out where his spirit was? She didn't want to take his spirit to absorb it. After the end of the world, exploring people's spirits is an extremely bad, provocative, and impolite behavior. Looking at Yu, who was originally sitting next to her, now sitting cross-legged on the bed, he closed his eyes like Su, frowned for a long time, shook his head and sighed. "I can't find it." Su held her cheek and sighed, looking at the man in front of her who couldn't absorb crystal cores and couldn't find his own essence. He had a great prophet like her, but he was so stupid that he couldn't use anything she said. He had a good hand of cards in life, but he played them in a mess. How could this be possible? If you can't find it, stop looking. It's tiring.
She yawned.
When Yu came, the whole bedroom became warmer.
So she felt sleepy.
With Yu's help, she lay on the bed, closed her eyes, and said, "What I'm telling you is the top secret of the country. No one can reveal it except you. Yes, I promise not to spit a single word." When Yu, who was extremely sensitive to the term, heard Su say top state secrets, he immediately looked solemn and crossed out every word Su said tonight. He was professionally trained, and he would not say anything even if he was caught and beaten half to death. Then another night passed and no mutant animals came. It was estimated that there should be no mutant animals around Bafong village that could cause serious trouble. So the next morning, Su, Yu, and others prepared to return to the safe zone. Brother Pai was making breakfast. In the wisps of smoke, he looked at Su standing beside him. Su was holding a large bowl with a belly as big as a ball, preparing to serve her rice. He asked Su, "Yesterday, a few of my brothers were accidentally hit by a fallen cabinet when they were trying to pry open the door. They have some injuries on their bodies, but they don't look infected and their spirits are good. Should my injured brothers be taken back to Apple Villa District, or should they stay here to recover?" Su held the bowl, tilted her head and thought for a while, then said, "Now that safe zone, I'm afraid it's not so easy to enter if you're injured, and I'm also afraid that some mutant animals will come tonight. It's best for the injured to rest and recuperate here. This is the most troublesome thing about living in the countryside." "Yes, I think so too. If you are injured, you might as well not enter the safe zone, so as to avoid any unexpected problems when passing the level." Brother Pai responded and used a large spoon to serve Su a bowl of bone soup, letting her drink it first, while he continued to cook his meal. After people from all parties arrived one after another, the people on Yu's side and the people on Pai Ge's side began to make a new allocation. Since the situation here is already like this, The injured cannot enter the safe zone, and they cannot be without armed personnel watching at night, so why not just leave all the injured behind and send a few people back to drag some medical supplies from the safe zone? Everyone discussed while eating. After the meal, Yu and Brother Pai organized a few strong people to continue picking vegetables in the vegetable gardens. After the vegetables in several vegetable gardens were picked, there were almost 5 or 6 large vehicles. They left some for themselves to eat, loaded 5 city SUVs with vegetables, and loaded 5 cars with various decorations and garbage, a total of 10 vehicles. 10 uninjured people, including Yu, Su, King Kong, Zhuoshijia, Brother Pai, and others drove these 10 vehicles loaded with supplies back to the safe zone. Sure enough, when entering the safe zone, there was an additional procedure, which was to check whether there were any injuries on the body surface. Originally, to check whether there were any injuries on the body surface, one had to take off all clothes and be checked by professional personnel. However, many psychics could not accept this method of inspection, especially female psychics, who resisted very strongly. Therefore, the inspection was changed to require the team entering the safe zone to be quarantined for 2 hours and the ordinary team to be quarantined for 4 hours. Of course, if you don't want to be quarantined for such a long time, you can still go into a small room, take off all your clothes, and let people check you up and down, left and right, front and back, inside and out, and take a photo and register. In this way, those who have no problems can directly enter the safe zone. Yu cursed and swore, and naturally refused to take off his clothes, nor did he want to stay in isolation for inspection. Seeing that he was about to force his way into the safe zone again, Su grabbed him and advised, "It's the same everywhere. Even if we go to another safe zone in the future, we will still be isolated and under observation. You have to get used to it. Besides, a little impatience can ruin a big plan." She raised her eyes and pointed to the sky. Coincidentally, the eagle flew over their heads. Su looked at Yu's personality. Perhaps before the end of the world, he was the kind of person who enjoyed privileges. So after the end of the world, he was like a thorn in the side of things wherever he went. Anyway, he was impatient to follow the rules. Su was a little helpless. Such a person would not be able to integrate into anywhere unless he built a base of his own. But if you build a base yourself, you have to follow the rules of the base. Otherwise, if you make the slightest mistake, you will bring the virus into the base you built with your own hands. It would be a pity to think about it. Besides, building a base and managing the lives of tens of thousands of people was not something that she and Yu could handle. To put it bluntly, neither of them was in the mood. Fortunately, Yu still listened to what Su said. She held Yu, and he stopped making trouble. He stayed by Su's side obediently for 2 hours, handed over 5 trucks of garbage and materials, and while the weather was still good, he dragged 5 trucks of vegetables back to the Apple Villa district. When they got home, they couldn't help being nagged by Su's father and mother again. Su was responsible for laughing, and Yi was responsible for nodding and saying yes. The old people were a little nagging, but it was also a kind of happiness to have 2 old people nagging them from time to time in life. So, just listen carefully. If there are some things that disagree with them, just listen. It is your own business whether you do it behind their backs or not. Your parents are old, and it is impossible for them to supervise you in everything. In fact, your parents also know in their hearts that what else can they do for their children now besides nagging? After being nagged, Yu went to see his brothers and checked how the Eagle Eye plan was going. Su was at home and had a good meal with her parents. They talked about the situation in Bafong village and the hidden dangers of being frequently harassed by mutant plants and animals in the wild. Su's mother asked worriedly, "Since the world outside the safe zone is so unsafe, let's listen to them and hand over half of the supplies. It's safer to stay in the city. After all, there are only zombies in the city." That may not be the case. Su leaned on the sofa, looking at the luxuriously decorated villa. The decoration style here was indeed obviously different from those of the country villas. She hesitated and did not speak out her worries. She just said to her parents sitting on another sofa, "Lu Yin will not let go of the child in my belly." Did Su feel more and more restless staying in this Apple Villa district? Or did she think that even if Lu Yin built a base, it would only last for 2 or 3 years, and they would still have to leave by then? Either of these two worries made her parents hard to understand. If she said that she felt something was wrong here, her parents would ask why. If she said that she was reborn and knew that the Xiangqing base would only last for 2 or 3 years, her parents would think that she had prenatal anxiety disorder, and it was a very serious one, so serious that she had delusions. Wasn't that serious?
Ah?
Are you sure? As it was about their grandson, Sue's father and mother were obviously more nervous. They looked at Su, and their expressions became serious. This child hasn't been born yet, but Luyin is already thinking about him? Sue's father and mother looked at each other again. Not only Luyin is thinking about him, but Xie Qingyan has also been thinking about him, right? Su nodded and looked at Sue's father and mother's faces. The hesitation turned into an expression that wanted to leave immediately. She knew that what she said just hit her parents' soft spot, so she explained, although the environment outside is not very good now, it is quite harsh and there is nothing yet, but fortunately we can deal with the mutant plants and animals that are about to appear. After we go over there, we can do some repairs, build some walls, plant some mutant bushes, and live our lives with caution. It is better than living in this safe zone and being on guard against being harmed all the time. After moving to Bafong village, it will be much more difficult at first than staying here, but in the long run, they can still earn Luyin's crystal cores after leaving the safe zone. Bafong village is not far from the base that Luyin will build in the future. By then, they can plant more vegetables and transport water and vegetables to the base to sell. Oh, Luyin had been assassinated by then, and I don't know whether the base could be established. Su's father and mother were persuaded by Su, and they stood up and began to discuss what to pack and take out. Su's mother treasured her mutant fields the most, and thought of getting a whole truck to transport the soil out. As for Su's father, his blueprints were the most important. In addition, all the dry goods, frozen meat, and baby products in the basement had to be taken away. Su watched the two old people busying themselves. She sat on the sofa, smiling and not interfering. Just as she was planning to take a rest and have a bowl of soup, she heard the sound of knocking on the iron gate outside the wall. So Su got up, walked out of the living room, passed through several greenhouse vegetable fields in the yard, and went to the iron gate. She saw Dai Chun and Zhou Xiaolin. Dai Chun had an embarrassed look on his face, and Zhou Xiaolin was wearing ordinary clothes, which were wrinkled and smelled of sweat, but she still wore a hat on her head symbolically. Although it was very difficult for her to stay in confinement after childbirth, she still didn't want to get any serious illness during the period. Su opened the iron gate, stood by the door, and looked at the two people, and asked, "What's the matter?"
We.
Dai Chun lowered his head, not knowing where to start. Zhou Xiaolin took over his words, smiled awkwardly, and said to Su, "It's like this, Su, we too want to stay with you, is it okay?"
Oh. Susurraste cerebros.
She saw Dai Chun and Zhou Xiaolin, who looked worried and sallow. They looked at each other, neither of them knowing how to start the conversation. They probably came here to say that they wanted to stay. She didn't say they could stay, nor did she say they couldn't, just because Su knew that she was about to leave here, but these two people were only interested in the stable life in the Apple Villa district, and felt that following her would give them the shade of the trees. If these two people didn't want to follow her to live a wandering life in the wild, why should she keep them in the Apple Villa area now? "We don't eat and drink for free. My husband knows the addresses of many pharmaceutical factories, which have thousands of varieties of drugs. I can wash clothes and cook, and help take care of the children." As Zhou Xiaolin was talking, her face suddenly turned red, as if she had been driven into a panic by Su's indifferent look of hesitation. She stiffened her neck and suddenly said loudly, "I still have milk. Really, I have a lot of milk. I can help feed the babies. All 9 babies can be fed."
Puff.
Su couldn't help but laugh at Zhou Xiaolin's words. Her eyes curved like 2 crescent moons. She nodded and smiled so hard that her teeth could not be hidden. She said, "Okay, sure, then you can stay. In fact, there is enough milk powder for the babies. I heard from Liang Xiaoqi that recently several babies are over 6 months old and can add complementary foods. As the 9 babies grow gradually, they will drink less and less milk, but they will not stop drinking milk completely. However, nothing in the world is absolute. What if one day The milk powder is no longer available. Isn't it just right for Zhou Xiaolin, a wet nurse who claims to be able to breastfeed 9 babies, to come in handy? Thinking of this, Su unconsciously looked at her chest again. I don't know if Xiao Ai's milk is enough. The next morning, Su, who had eaten and rested enough, changed into thin April clothes with her 5-month-old belly and walked in the small square with Yu to bask in the sun. She had already agreed with Brother Pai last night to first move some baby supplies into the car, as well as the mutated soil that Su's mother forced to be moved into the car, and then transport the baby supplies out. Father Su is going to go out with them today. They still need someone like Father Su over there who can concentrate on studying how to build the wall. Otherwise, there will be mutant animals harassing them every night in the future, and people will not be able to sleep well. When Zhuo Shijia walked out of the baby building, he saw Yu supporting Su as they walked around the small square. A special forces soldier was supporting Lao Ganma and walking slowly in front of Yu and Su. Zhuo Shijia was stunned for a moment, and then looked at the villa area on the Su family side. It was tinkered with by Su's father all day long, and a small prototype of a city wall was built. Except for the small path leading to the gate of the villa area, the medical building, the baby building, the buildings where Brother Pai and the young and dangerous lived, the buildings where Yu and the special forces lived, the building where Li Xiaoyu formed a cocoon, the building where Qinyu, Ruerwei, and Lao Ganma lived, and the Su family villa were all silently surrounded by a wall. With just the last bit left, their area would become an independent entity. Su's father had long planned to enclose the villas where all the people in the Su family lived within the small city wall. When Wang Jun was around, Su's father discussed it with Wang Jun. When Wang Jun was not around, Su's father tinkered with it slowly by himself. No one cared when it became like this. By the time it attracted people's attention, the city wall was already standing tall here. Su and Yi were walking slowly around the small plot of land surrounded by several villas, and Zhuo Shijia's eyes were following them. When they passed the place where Su's father and Brother Pai were drying the grain, Zhuo Shijia discovered that the place where Su's father was standing was originally a small forest, but now it had been flattened for him and Brother Pai, leaving a small open space. On the open space, a grape trellis was built at some point, and under the trellis was a round table with a pot of tea next to the table. Su's father's drawings were spread out on the round table, pressed underneath the teapot. Ruerwei was holding a ball in his hand, running around in the open space at Qinyue's call, while Qinyue was at the stove at the back, using a large spatula to turn the dishes inside. Under the stove, chopped firewood was burning. Is Qinyu cooking breakfast for the special forces? Ever since Su's mother quit cooking for the special forces, Qinyu has taken over the job, cooking for 18 special forces soldiers every day. The firelight faced the morning sun, and a wisp of smoke rose in the early morning light. A team of soldiers in short-sleeved army green t-shirts were running along the city wall in an orderly line. They had not run far when 2 young nurses brought out a basin of sheets. One nurse collected the sheets that were drying in the yard, and the other nurse began to hang the freshly washed sheets on the rope. In the corner, 2 chickens were raised at some point. The chickens were too big, but Zhuo Shijia could still tell they were chickens. The 2 chickens probably didn't hurt anyone, so no one cared about them and let them wander around in the corners looking for insects to eat. When Zhuo Shijia saw this picture, his heart suddenly warmed up. He felt that in this small world, although everyone was busy doing their own things, the pictures intertwined with each other made people feel so peaceful and tranquil. It's a pity to leave like this. She walked under the grape trellis and looked at Su's father's blueprint. The paper was filled with the building materials he needed, such as how many bags of cement and how many tons of steel bars. It seemed that Su's father wanted to expand the wall. At this time, Su had also walked into the grape trellis, supported her belly that was like a small ball, smiled at Zhuo Shijia, and followed Zhuo Shijia's gaze to the table. Su couldn't help but smile, pointed at the building materials on the paper, and asked Su's father, who was standing not far away, "Dad, are you addicted to building houses now? This is not a joke." Father Su threw away the dustpan in his hand and asked Brother Pai to clean up the remaining mess. He walked into the grape trellis with a serious face, picked up the teapot from the newly built earthen table, sat on his recliner, but looked into the distance and said sadly, "I always feel that the outside world is not safe enough. You're so tired outside. If you don't even feel safe at home when you come back, then you are too pitiful. Dad, don't think so much. It's too tiring." Su shook her head, feeling a little melancholy in her heart. They had stayed in the Apple Villa district for a long time, and it was like a small safe zone surrounded by it. Now they were going to move, and everyone felt reluctant to leave, which was normal. She thought that if the assassination attempt on Lu Yin was successful, the Apple Villa district might be able to be returned to in the future. She just didn't know if anyone would occupy their nest by then. Father Su had spent so much time and effort to build it, and it was just given to someone else. She really couldn't think about this possibility. When she thought of this possibility, even Su felt a little uncomfortable. But when I think about it, this is a common thing. Others occupy their nests, and they occupy others' nests. In the end times, who doesn't occupy others? It is very common. Otherwise, how can we say that we are running around? In the end times, people can't have a sense of belonging to a certain place. Once they have this sense of belonging, it's over. They can't move away. Even if the zombie tide comes, they will die in this place. It's really sad. Su wanted to talk to her father about this. In the future, they should just build the nest as sturdy as possible, but they should never invest any emotions in it. If they became attached to the nest they built like in the Apple Villa district, it would be better not to build it at all, and just do nothing and watch others build one. However, looking at Father Su's expression, which was melancholy, but he said nothing more, Su was relieved. Father Su had lived for such an old age, which was almost the same as her 2 lifetimes. Wouldn't he understand? Everyone who had experienced the end of the world must understand it in their hearts, but even if they understood it, they would still be melancholy. So Su let her father do whatever he wanted. Yiyu supported her, and she was about to walk out of the grape arbor to continue her walk. Zhuo Shijia looked up at Su's belly and said, "Go to Dr. Hong to have a blood test, and check the routine blood test and trace elements. Yiyu, since you are the father of the baby, you should have your blood drawn together. You too should do a Down syndrome screening. After the blood test, go to Li Mingji for AB ultrasound." Li Mingji is one of the 5 young nurses. She is currently learning obstetrics and gynecology from Zhuo Shijia. She also worked in the B ultrasound room for several years before the end of the world, so she has no problem operating the B ultrasound machine. "Hey, good." Yiyu bowed and nodded respectfully to Zhuo Shijia, completely losing his usual arrogance. Now the health of his wife and children depended on these doctors, so naturally, he had to be nicer to Zhuo Shijia. Su also nodded and turned to look at Zhuo Shijia. She observed the expression on Zhuo Shijia's face and saw that he did not seem to be melancholy, so she breathed a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that everyone would be like Su's father and would be too reluctant to leave when they were about to leave. If others don't want to leave, then forget it. Let them find a job in the safe zone to support themselves. If Zhuo Shijia doesn't want to leave the safe zone and doesn't want to go out with Su, what should we do? Come to think of it, Su never asked Zhuo Shijia whether she was willing to follow her out of the safe zone and live in the precarious life. On the day of leaving, we still have to gather everyone together. Those who are willing to go can get on the car with her, and those who don't want to go, forget it. It was Su's ability to take people away. If Lu Yin died and there were no conspiracies, she would not force him to leave. If he was willing to go to a safe area to seek a better job, Su would not beg him to leave. But Zhuo Shijia was the only one. If he was unwilling to go with her, Su would feel reluctant. After all, Zhuo Shijia was a great doctor, and Xiao AI was delivered by Zhuo Shijia in her previous life. Su did not want to change him in this life. Supported by Yiyu, she walked step by step to the medical building. At this moment, she really felt that she had some symptoms of prenatal anxiety. She felt that she still had to go out and move around and breathe some fresh air. Staying at home like this was not a solution. Why are you sighing? Dr. Zhuo and your mother have both told you to be happy and laugh often. Otherwise, Yi Xiaoai might not be lively when she is born. On the way to the prenatal checkup with Su, Yu was obviously frowning, but after hearing Su Su sigh, he began to lecture Su Su. Su Su glanced at Yu beside her and said worriedly, I was just thinking, Luin is poaching people everywhere. If these doctors and nurses really set their sights on the hospital built in the safe zone, thinking that they can have a brilliant future and a stable life there, and they are poached away, how will Xiao AI be born? Really? Originally, Yu had no idea about this. When he heard Su Su express his worries, he immediately became anxious. Lu Yin would die, but the hospital in the safe zone was said to be already being prepared. Before Lu Yin died, he would prepare a hospital called Wild Land. But he is a man and he must solve the problems that his woman cannot solve. So he glanced up at the sky and thought of a good idea. He immediately smiled and said to Su Su, It's okay, just rest assured and take care of the baby. Leave it to your brother. I promise to keep Zhuoshijia under close watch. Even if she wants to leave, I will keep a close watch on her until our little AI is born. Don't mess around. Seeing the bandit-like expression on Yiyu's face, Su Su felt uneasy. She was afraid that Yiyu would cause trouble at this critical moment. In fact, when Su Su met Zhuoshijia for the first time, she also thought about tying Zhuoshijia to her side to help her give birth to Xiao AI smoothly. But at that time, Su Su had just been reborn, and her mind was still a little abnormal. After spending so much time with these doctors and nurses, Su Su's mentality became a little calmer, and her brain circuits finally regained some normal feelings. She felt that this matter could not be forced. If she forcibly kidnapped people and made Zhuoshijia feel resentful, it would not be good for Xiao AI at all. She still hoped that Zhuoshijia could follow her sincerely. Although their temporary life might be a little turbulent, if Zhuoshijia chose to stand on the right side, Su Su would definitely give Zhuoshijia a bright and promising future. On the other hand, a medical worker with a real sense of responsibility would not easily leave for the so-called bright future. Regarding this point, Su Su told Zhuoshijia to just wait and see. So Su Su told Yu again and again, telling him not to act rashly or do something like kidnapping someone. The two of them went all the way to the second floor of the medical building and found Dr. Hong to draw blood. Now, the second floor of the medical building is completely Dr. Hong's world. It is filled with various research instruments, and every room is filled. Su Su has no idea what each instrument is used for, but Dr. Hong is immersed in these instruments all day long and never leaves the second floor. He was wearing a mask on his face and a very clean white coat. He called Su Su and Yiyu into a room that had been decorated like a laboratory. Su Su sat at the table, rolled up his sleeves, and waited for his blood to be drawn. After a while, Dr. Hong came with a coagulation tube for drawing blood. He tied Su Su's tender arm with a leather rope and inserted the needle into Su Su's blood vessel. Yiyu, who was standing behind Su Su, swayed and felt a little dizzy. He hurriedly turned his head away, covered his eyes, and dared not look again. Su Su couldn't help laughing at the sight, and tilted her head to ask, Haven't you seen too many gunfire and bloodbaths? How come you're so cowardly just because of a blood draw?
I'm scared.
I just don't dare to watch it. It hurts. Covering his eyes, Yu leaned against the door, waiting for Su Su to say it was okay before he dared to open his eyes. He stared at the tube of blood in Dr. Hong's hand and said with some pain, Oh, so much blood has been drawn. I'll kill the pig later and give you some blood to replenish your blood. You are so hypocritical. You have to kill a pig to replenish this little blood. When I give birth, blood will flow like a river. What are you going to kill to replenish my blood? Giving Yiyu a cold look, Su Su held his waist and walked out, waiting for Yiyu to draw blood. However, he did not see that Yiyu's originally dark face suddenly became whiter than paper. What? Su Su will bleed into a river. In his mind, a picture of Su Su lying in a sea of blood immediately flashed. The picture was too beautiful, and Yiyu did not dare to look at it. When it was Yiyu's turn to draw blood, the man didn't even blink, but kept a pale face and staggered to look for Li Mingji. Su Su sat on the second floor waiting for Yiyu to find Li Mingji and come back to do an ultrasound for her. Occasionally, I saw Dr. Hong busy in the room, so I asked casually Dr. Hong, what results have you found in your vaccine research? Dr. Hong, who was analyzing the trace elements in Su Su's blood, looked back at Su Su with annoyance, as if he felt that Su Su's words disturb him. There was a kind of unhappiness in his eyes. Su Su lowered his head, touched his nose, and became a little embarrassed. Anyone who has some talent tends to have a weird temper. Doesn't she have the same weird temper? Haha. Just as she was trying to save face, Li Mingji and Yiyu came back. She took Su Su and Yiyu to Supermarket B, asked Su Su to lie on the bed, lifted the clothes on her belly, turned on the B ultrasound machine, applied some developing solution on Su Su's bulging belly, held up the instrument, and rolled it over and over on Su Su's belly. Yiyu had been sitting beside Su Su's bed, his face pale. Because of Su Su's words blood flowing like a river, he was in a very low mood and couldn't cheer up. At this moment, he saw something like a peanut moving on the color ultrasound screen, so he asked, "What is this?" "Fetus." Li Mingji stared at the screen with a faint expression and tapped his fingers on the keyboard. When he answered Yiyu, he did not look at Yiyu, but when Yiyu heard his words, his expression suddenly became stupid, and he stammered and asked, "Fetus, fetus, fetus. My girl, my girl?
Eh?
How do you know it's a daughter?" Li Mingji turned his head and looked at Yiyu in surprise. Yiyu chuckled and was about to say that it was Su Su who said it was a girl, but Su Su raised her foot, kicked Yiyu and said, "Let Dr. Li take a good look at it. Don't talk too much. Be careful not to miss anything." Because Li Mingji is studying with Zhuo, in order to express politeness, everyone no longer calls Li Mingji Nurse Li, but Dr. Li. The gender of the fetus, which is almost 5 months old, can be determined long ago. Zhuo had never told Su Su that it was a daughter, and neither had Li Mingji. Su Su had known for a long time that it was a daughter. It was Su Su who informed Yiyu in advance that she was pregnant with a daughter. However, in order to prevent Yiyu from giving her away and arousing Li Mingji's suspicion, Su Su hurriedly interrupted Yiyu's words. Okay, Dr. Li, take a good look. Don't let my daughter miss anything." Yiyu's face was full of cuteness, his eyes narrowed into slits. Looking at the peanut like Yi Xiaowai on the screen, he couldn't help but ask again, "Why can't I see this clearly? What part is unclear? Look, this is her hand, this is her foot, and this is her head." Li Mingji raised his finger and pointed at Xiao AI on the screen to Yiyu. Yiyu nodded repeatedly and responded with "Oh." He looked more serious than when he was studying in class and listening to the teacher's lecture. It's a pity that there is no 4D color Doppler ultrasound machine here, otherwise we could see it more clearly. After pointing out Xiao AI's hands, feet, and head to Yiyu, Li Mingji took back the instrument rolling on Su Su's belly with some regret. He turned around and printed Xiao AI's photo while explaining to Su Su and Yiyu, "The fetus is developing very well and is very healthy. You will go to Dr. Hong to get a blood test report to see if you need to supplement some trace elements. Have you felt unwell recently?" As she spoke, Su Su rubbed her tailbone. She thought that this life was finally much better than her previous life. In her previous life, her calves started to cramp from this time on. Maybe it was because she was more concerned about nutrition when eating in this life. Why didn't you tell me that your tailbone hurts?" Li Mingji didn't say anything, but Yiyu, who was sitting next to him, started to make a fuss. He quickly stood up and rubbed Su Su's ace.
Felt a little embarrassed.
She glanced at Li Mingji, who was pursing his lips and laughing, and with her backhand, she opened Yiyu's hand that was helping to rub her ace and said in a low voice, "I'm fine. Don't rub it, it won't do any good. Rubbing it can still slightly relieve some of the pain symptoms." Li Mingji smiled at Yiyu's nervous look. Although she had been working for several years and had deeply experienced the fickleness of human nature in the apocalypse, and felt that although the apocalypse was full of sadness, Li Mingji still liked to watch the interaction between Yiyu and Su Su. She explained to Yiyu, "As the fetus grows, it will press on the mother's spine, causing the coccyx to be overloaded. So it's really not easy for a woman to give birth. As a father, you should be more considerate and caring towards the mother. After all, she gave birth to children for you. If the father doesn't understand the pain involved, then the woman's life will be too miserable. Yes, 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 you are right. Yiyu nodded rapidly, agreeing to whatever Li Mingji said. Actually, for a rough man like him, the matter of women giving birth was nothing. But he had heard from Su Su that she bled like a river when she gave birth, and also heard from Su Su that she had a sharp pain in her coccyx. Now, he was lectured by Li Mingji. At this moment, Yiyu felt that Su Su, who was pregnant with a child for him, was great no matter how he looked at it. He slowly developed a sense of respect for Su Su for no reason, so he was even more attentive when he accompanied Su Su for prenatal checkups. Su Su frowned, thinking about how she had never had coccyx pain when she was pregnant at this month in her previous life, so she asked, "But I heard from my mother that when she was pregnant with me, her tailbone only hurt when she was about to give birth." It all varies from person to person. It all varies from person to person. You can't just rely on what the textbook says. Pregnancy knowledge is very important, but not everyone can get pregnant according to pregnancy knowledge. Yes, yes, you are right, Su. Listen to the doctor. Su Su was about to ask again, but Yiyu interrupted her. Now he just believed whatever the doctor said and whatever Su's mother said, without any doubt at all. She thanked Li Mingji and was helped out of the ultrasound room by Yiyu. Without Su Su's instructions, Yiyu took the initiative to go to Dr. Hong to get the blood test results. The results of the Down syndrome screening did not come out so quickly, but Su Su's trace elements came out. Dr. Hong handed the test reports filled with dense data to Yiyu and said, "Calcium, iron, and zinc deficiency."
Ah?
So many missing? Su Su held her waist and appeared from behind Yiyu in surprise. She took the test report from Yiyu and didn't quite understand. She looked at Dr. Hong and asked, "I feel pretty good. Why am I lacking so many trace elements? These are just low values, reminding you that you should supplement calcium, iron, and zinc. If you don't, it will cause various health problems for the mother and the fetus." Dr. Hong glanced at Su Su, then looked back at his microscope, appearing to be very busy and concise. Su Su was about to ask if a lack of calcium, iron, or zinc would cause her calf cramps or something, but Yiyu immediately jumped out, nodded, and said firmly, "She must be supplemented. Calcium, iron, and zinc, right? I'll give her supplements right away."
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you, doctor. Then, Yiyu carefully helped Su Su downstairs and went to Liang Xiaoqi to ask for calcium, iron, zinc, and other trace element supplements. Unexpectedly, Liang Xiaoqi spread her hands and said directly, "We don't have Elevit, and we don't have calcium, iron, and zinc suitable for pregnant women."
Ah?
How can there be nothing? What kind of a lousy hospital is this? Yiyu was anxious, and his voice was a little loud. Su Su was sitting on the sofa in the medical building. She turned her head and looked at Yiyu, who seemed to be about to lose his temper. She quickly stretched her head and shouted, "Come here. Yiyu, come here." Yiyu frowned and glared at Liang Xiaoqi, as if he felt that Liang Xiaoqi and her team were extremely unprofessional in running this hospital without any medicine to supplement trace elements for pregnant women. However, since Su Su was sitting on the sofa and kept calling him, he didn't want to continue to cause trouble for Liang Xiaoqi. He just turned around hurriedly and trotted back to Su Su. "What's going on? Why are you angry at Liang Xiaoqi? It's the end of the world now, and you know that medicine is scarce." Su Su reached out and pulled Yiyu, who was standing in front of her with his head down, to sit down. With a smile on her face, she gave Yiyu some advice: "Gather a few people, and we'll go out to find some medicine tomorrow morning." "Okay, I'll find it for you, so you don't have to go." "Why shouldn't I go? Are you pregnant, or am I pregnant?" Okay, you did not argue with Su Su. He had figured out that Su Su just wanted to go out and have fun under various excuses. No matter if it was to set up a nest or to look for medicine, as long as there was a chance, Su Su would definitely go outside. But the situation this time was a little different. The calcium, iron, and zinc he was looking for had to be found in the downtown area before the end of the world. With Su Su's big belly, the process would be too slow. You might as well get a few brothers together to move faster and go back and forth in one night. So he agreed with Su on the surface, saying that he would take her out, but in fact he took advantage of the middle of the night and quickly counted a few heads and ran away. When Su woke up the next day, she found out that Yiyu had run away in the middle of the night. She was a little embarrassed. She was only 5 months pregnant, and she had become a burden? It would be fine if he ran away, but he actually ran away secretly. If he didn't take her out, would she still insist on going out with him? However, since Yiyu had already taken people out to find medicine, Su stayed in the Apple Villa area with peace of mind and did not want to cause any more trouble. According to her schedule, after filling the water tank on the top floor with water, she began a walk around the small square alone. At this time, in Xiapingli, Brother Pai was instructing several gangsters under his command to move things to the car. On the path at the gap in the city wall, a black jeep drove over and stopped by the side of the path. After a while, Xia Yaoshe got out of the car wearing a black short-sleeved t-shirt and black casual pants. Getting off the car with him were Zhang Anquan, who had a smile on his face, and Su Xiaofeng. Su Xiaofeng was a person with special abilities, so his recovery from injuries was faster than that of ordinary people. Despite being injured so badly that even his intestines fell out of his abdominal cavity, he recovered in just a week and was discharged from the hospital. The three of them walked into the city wall with long legs. Xia Yaoshe frowned and stared at Su up and down with his dark eyes. He felt that even if this girl was pregnant, she was still very pretty and clean. Su was wearing a light blue short-sleeved baby doll shirt, white slim-leg maternity pants, and a pair of canvas shoes. Her long hair was braided into a pigtail and hung down on her shoulders. Her exposed skin was delicate and fair, and her neck was long and slender, with just the right curve. She didn't look like the unkempt women in the apocalypse at all. Zhang Anquan, who was behind Xia Yaoshe, raised his hand and greeted Su. Su nodded in response and looked at Su Xiaofeng. Su Xiaofeng seemed a little out of shape and kept glancing towards the medical building.
Shushu.
At this time, Xia Yaoshe had already walked in front of Su. His brows were still furrowed, as if he was hiding a lot of things, and he looked at Su and called out. When Su turned her eyes back to Xia Yaoshe, he said, "I have something to ask you." "You say." "My aunt was hidden by Lu Yin, and Xia Qingyan also joined his army and became a clerk." "Oh, so you didn't go?" Su had known for a long time that Xia's mother was held hostage by Lu Yin. She also knew that Xia Qingyan had gone to the safe zone a few days ago. It was said that it was arranged by Li Ying. Liang Xiaoqi, the gossip monger, loved to inquire about these things. According to Liang Xiaoqi, the reason why Xia Qingyan was able to get an official position with Lu Yin was because he sold Feifei to Li Ying. What surprised Su was why Xia Yaoshe appeared in front of her. She was busy setting up a nest outside recently and didn't know that Xia Yaoshe had joined Lu Yin's superpower vanguard team. So Su was still wondering, was Xia Yaoshe threatened by Lu Yin to join the superpower vanguard team? Or was he planning to give up Xia's mother and not care about her life or death? At this time, Xia Yaoshe's eyes projected an indescribable greed, and his handsome face showed a cold smile. He said to Su, "I was just going to discuss this with you." "Consult me?" Whether Xia Yaoshe joins the superpower vanguard team or not is none of Su's business. "Why should I discuss this with her?" "Yes, I want to discuss this with you." Xia Yaoshe tilted his head, and a strand of short hair on his forehead swayed. In his deep eyes, there emerged an indescribable stubbornness and hidden anger that was unwilling to be trapped. "I have joined Lu Yin's superpower vanguard team for several days. I want to discuss cooperation with you. I want to monopolize all the food, vegetables, and clean water produced here." If Xia Yaoshe had not joined Lu Yin's superpower vanguard team, he would not have known that the so-called glamorous superpower vanguard team actually had a terrible living environment. From the moment he joined the superpower vanguard team, he was ordered by Lu Yin to kill outside every day without even a rest. Today was his first time back to the safe zone. According to Xia Yaoshe, before him, people died every day in this 300-man superpower vanguard team. Since the day it was formed, nearly 100 superpower people have been killed by Lu Yin. The zombies that walked slower than a turtle could kill nearly 100 superpower people, which shows how well Lu Yin used the superpower vanguard team. Of course, the various enviable preferential policies that were agreed upon before after joining the superpower pioneer team still exist, but that also requires that the people in the superpower pioneer team have the time to return to the safe zone. If they don't have the time to return to the safe zone, they naturally won't be able to enjoy those preferential policies. This is what Su looked at Xia Yaoshi and thought carefully. What on earth was Xia Yaoshi trying to do? His team of superpowers couldn't consume all the food, vegetables, and clean water produced by her, but he still wanted to monopolize it. Indeed, Xia Yaoshi did not deny his feelings at the moment. When he finished the weekly tasks issued by the base and returned to the safe zone, he learned that Xia's mother was now in Lu Yin's hands. The hatred in his heart still could not be calmed for a long time. Yes, he has never been the kind of person who can be manipulated by others. If Lu Yin wants to manipulate him, he can go to that superpower vanguard team for Xia's mother. But once he joined the superpower vanguard team, and the survival conditions there were like that, don't blame him for seizing the opportunity and causing trouble. Looking at Xia Yaoshi with some calculation in his eyes, Su nodded. She didn't care who she sold the supplies to. Anyway, she would earn crystal cores by selling them to Lu Yin, and she would also earn crystal cores by selling them to Xia Yaoshi. Perhaps selling them to Xia Yaoshi would be a little safer. After all, Lu Yin was not a very easy person to deal with. She turned around, intending to continue her walk, but after taking 2 steps, she turned back, half sideways, looked at Xia Yaoshi and smiled. Who did you say I met at the trading house a few days ago? Your aunt and Chu Xian were standing in front of the side door of the trading house, talking quite speculatively. How come after just a few days, your aunt was taken hostage by Lu Yin? Su said this on purpose. Seeing Xia Yaoshi's handsome face changing color, she couldn't help but feel happy. She asked Xia Yaoshi to protect Xia Qingyan again and again. What kind of feeling is it to be betrayed by the relative she protects with all her heart? Ha 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 ha, she smiled, turned her head with a happy face, and continued to walk. Xia Yaoshi was full of coldness, standing tall in the warm sun. Before Zhang Anquan could go up to ask what was wrong, Xia Yaoshi suddenly turned around. His tall body was glowing with purple lightning, and he left this place. Zhang Anquan stood there, thinking for a moment, and then he figured out what Su meant. Did Xia's mother and Chu Xian get along well? Chu Xian was Lu Yin's think tank. Many of the families of the superpowers were arranged by Chu Xian. If Xia's mother came to Chu Xian's house to arrange things for her, how could they not be in a good mood? Did Xia's mother run into Chu Xian by chance? In this situation, everyone knows that Xia Yaoshi and Su, the 2 special teams, are unwilling to join Lu Yin and obey Lu Yin's orders. But Xia's mother happened to run into Chu Xian and was able to have a good conversation with Chu Xian. If she wasn't stabbing Xia Yaoshi in the back, how big of a heart does Xia's mother have? So Zhang Anquan's face darkened, and he turned around and followed Xia Yaoshi out. When he passed by Su Xiaofeng, he pulled Su Xiaofeng, who had been staring at the medical building, and pulled Su Xiaofeng away. After walking for a while, Su felt a little tired, so she sat down under the grape trellis to rest her feet. She covered her stomach and wanted to bend down to rub her tight calves, but she felt unable to bend down. She straightened up, rubbed her stomach, which was as hard as a small ball, sighed, and gave up the idea of rubbing her calves. At this time, Brother Pai had already loaded several cars with baby supplies. At the request of Su's mother, he shoveled out 5 large cars of mutated soil from the Su family's wall. Then he said hello to Su, took Su's father, and drove out of the city wall, intending to deliver these supplies and Su's father to Bafang village in advance. He was only gone for a while, and Su Xiaofeng, who had left not long ago, came back with his men, driving more than 10 pickup trucks, carrying a large plastic bag of crystal cores. He smiled brightly, and after parking the car on the small flat land, he walked under the grape trellis with the crystal cores in his hand, put the large bag of ordinary crystal cores on the stone table, and said simply, Su, count them. These are crystal cores for buying vegetables, rice, and water purification for your family. The extra ones will be stored with you, and the less ones will be replenished next time. I'll ask my mom to order later.
I'm tired.
Su pushed the bag of crystal cores, stood up, and walked to Sue's father's rocking chair. She half lay down with her belly in her hands, but glanced at Su Xiaofeng and asked, "Has Xie Yaosher decided to stay in the Vanguard team?"
Why not?
"We must make sure he has no more superpowers to use." An evil smile flashed on Su Xiaofeng's young face. The supplies they asked Su to buy were precisely those used to bribe the superpowers of the Superpower Vanguard team. The superpowers who would join the Superpower Vanguard team were probably desperate people attracted by the various benefits of Lu Yin. Since they could work for Lu Yin for the benefits he gave them, they would definitely be bought by Xie Yaosher. They wanted Lu Yin to slowly become a commander without troops. Xie Yaosher is still suitable for doing big things. Su was rocking gently in the rocking chair, letting out a faint sigh. Su had never known how to deal with these interpersonal conspiracies and intrigues in her previous life. In this life, her ambition was not to do this, so it was even more unsuitable for her. Su Xiaofeng smiled modestly, then changed the subject and asked, "Hey, I've been here for so long. Why haven't I seen Dr. Jun? I'm out on a mission." "Oh, who did you go out with? Is it dangerous?" "It's not dangerous. I'm with Li Xia and the others." Su tilted her head and looked directly at Su Xiaofeng, who was sitting on the stone chair. Seeing the obvious worried expression on Su Xiaofeng's face, she smiled and joked, "Are you looking for a follow-up visit with Dr. Jun? Or do you have something else to ask for?" Not long after, the subordinates brought by Su Xiaofeng entered the Su family's wall and began to move vegetables into the bed of the pickup truck. Su's mother watched from the side with a smile on her face. Once Xie Yaosher's people monopolized the vegetables in her yard, Su's mother's pressure was suddenly reduced. Because Xie Yaosher wanted a lot of vegetables, any pickup truck could clear out some of the Su family's yard. Otherwise, those vegetables would be piled up in the yard, and they dared not dump too many of them into Lu Yin's trading company, so they could only stay here and wait to go bad. Xie Yaosher's more than 10 small pickup trucks bought all of Su's mother's stock at once. How could Su's mother not be happy? Moreover, they would be moving away soon, and the vegetables in the yard were really a burden. It would be better to sell them all, and then transport the mutated soil in the field to a safe area, which would save a lot of effort in moving the vegetables back and forth. After slightly filling the cargo beds of more than 10 small pickup trucks, the people brought by Su Xiaofeng pulled out a piece of tarpaulin and covered the vegetables. In this way, from the outside, no one would be able to find out that there were vegetables under the tarpaulin unless the tarpaulin was lifted. If some miscellaneous supplies were placed on the tarpaulin at that time, it would be even more difficult for people to notice. After more than 10 pickup trucks drove away, Su Xiaofeng sat for a while out of courtesy, and then got up to say goodbye. Su took a nap in the rocking chair for a while. When it was almost time for lunch, she carried the big bag of crystal cores on the table and entered the Su family's wall, asking Su's mother to count them so that she could keep an account for Xie Yaosher's people. "I don't know what the situation is like in Bafang village now. Brother Pai has been driving for several hours. I guess he has already arrived in Bafang village. Is Father Su used to the living environment outside the safe zone? Has you come back from looking for medicine? Is he being detained in the safe zone for observation for 2 hours?" With a faint worry in their hearts, Su and her mother had lunch. Her mother went to continue sorting out the supplies. Su, because Xiao Ai had put too much pressure on her coccyx, planned to go back to the bedroom to take a nap and rest.
I don't know what was wrong with the road today.
Before Su walked up the stairs, several cars came into her little world. They stopped on the small square outside the Su family's wall inside the city wall and honked their horns several times to ask if there was anyone there. In this April weather, the temperature in the south has become comfortably warm. No one is walking around in Zhaoping anymore. Except for a few people arranged by Yiyu to stand guard in secret corners, everyone has returned to their respective villas to rest and prepare for a nap. Even the noisy babies are drowsy at this moment. Hearing the car horn, Su protected her small belly and went down the stairs, walked into the bright sunshine, and walked out of the wall. She saw Wang Zijiao and Li Ying getting out of the car. Several soldiers also got out of the cars behind them. Following the soldiers came 3 or 4 people in white coats who looked like researchers.
Shushu?
Wang Zijiao, wearing a neat military uniform, turned around in a standard posture and saw Su Su coming out of the iron gate. He saluted Su Su with a serious face, pointed at the 4 researchers, and said to Su Su, "These are our researchers. They want to test the soil in the safe zone to see if there is any virus. It would be best if they could take some soil from the wall of your house." Su Su laughed. Her body shrugged for no reason. She tilted her head to look at the 4 researchers, and then looked at the soldiers who were responsible for protecting the 4 researchers. She felt that every soldier had a look of watching a good show, especially Li Ying, whose smile was so joyful. While Su Su was busy looking for a home outside and settling her family, the researchers from Luyin had already thoroughly analyzed the soil that Chu Xian brought back. There was indeed a doomsday virus that caused human mutations, but this amount of doomsday virus was just like the doomsday virus in the air we breathe every day. The amount was very low, and was not enough to support the theory that it was this soil that caused the Su family's vegetables to grow faster than others. Some researchers have suggested that in addition to building a circle of city walls, the Su family also built a separate wall around their villa, most likely to protect the mutated soil within the wall and prevent others from coveting their soil. So, if you want to confirm whether the Su family's vegetables grow so fast because of the soil, the best way is to enter the wall and take some soil for testing.
Cannot.
Su Su shook her head and raised her eyebrows. The light blue hem of her dress was blown up by the breeze, further highlighting her belly. No matter what, she couldn't let Wang Zijiao bring people into the wall of her villa today. Others thought there was something fishy about her soil, but she let people in so easily and openly to take soil tests. Wasn't that a mistake?
Shushu, please cooperate.
Seeing that Su Su refused, Wang Zijiao took a step forward in high military boots, with the invisible energy emitted by a gold-type mutant, trying to put pressure on Su Su, who was pregnant. Behind Su Su, the special forces left by Yiyu, the gangsters left by Pai Go, and the 5 psychics who had decided to stay with Su Su under the pretext of recuperating, all rushed forward in an instant. In an instant, the soldiers behind Wang Zijiao and Li Ying all raised their guns and aimed at Su Su's stomach. "Su Su, you can try it. Which is faster, your ability or the bullet?" Li Ying stood behind Wang Zijiao, looked at Su Su and smiled, and said very considerately, "Of course, if we can't survive, I'm afraid that the baby in your belly will also die, so why bother? Just listen, and we'll take the soil sample and leave. How about that?" If all that Lu Yin did in the past and the threats Chu Xian made were just stepping on Su Su's bottom line, then today, the actions of these people pointing guns at her belly were already forcing her to become a demon. As a mother, it was too easy to become a demon. If anyone dared to touch her children, she would become a demon. Su's mother, who was inside the wall, was furious and trembling as she rushed out. She was about to protect Su Su, but she only heard Su Su's eyebrows raised and asked in a stern voice, "So, you have now concluded that you can use my unborn child to control me at will?" Everyone seemed to have not noticed anything unusual. Li Ying still had a smile on her face. Wang Zijiao was still releasing his gold-type psychic energy, trying to put some kind of pressure on Su Su. The special forces, gangsters, and the recuperating psychics were still showing a confrontational expression. Su's mother was still rushing towards Su Su, wanting to protect her. The 4 soldiers whose wrists were cut did not feel any pain. After a while, the gun fell to the ground. There was still a warm palm on the gun, maintaining the gesture of holding the gun. Li Ying and Wang Zijiao heard the sound of the gun falling to the ground. When they slowly turned around, the 4 soldiers raised their severed arms and began to howl. In an instant, for streams of blood gushed out like a faucet and scattered all over the ground. "You!" Li Ying turned back in shock and was about to ask Su Su, "Is it okay to break the peaceful confrontation between the 2 sides like this?" But Su Su whipped Li Ying with a water whip, leaving a bloody mark on her face. Wang Zijiao was about to move, and one of the special forces left by Yi Yu pushed out a golden wall and surrounded Wang Zijiao inside the wall. I don't want to make things worse. Su Su protected her belly and took a step forward to block her mother, who rushed over behind her. She looked straight at Liang, whose face was full of horror. But you came up again and again, testing my bottom line again and again.
Now you understand. Where's my bottom line?
Wang Zijiao, who was trapped in a circle of golden walls, began to beat the golden walls desperately. The originally smooth wall surface suddenly had many uneven marks. Su Su took a look and then looked at Liang. She stepped forward and looked at Liang. In her clear eyes, she saw Li Ying's figure retreating step by step. She continued, "As you expected, I am a high-level water-based psychic, but I am also very timid. I can't accomplish anything big, and I don't have any ambitions. But you all know that I am timid only because I want to protect the baby in my belly. Once I find out that it is useless to protect the baby, you will understand how terrifying it is to be an enemy of a high-level psychic and a crazy one who doesn't care about his life. 10 years of searching, 10 years of madness, 10 years of blood and gore. Su Su spent every day stepping on corpses. She was famous for not caring about her life in the apocalypse. Because of a clue about Xiao AI, she massacred an entire safe zone. That safe zone was even bigger than the one Lu Yin had now. For a mad person, there is no reason at all. Without reason, will he still care about the lives of innocent people? It was also in this life that Xiao AI returned to her belly. Su Su finally found her humanity and was willing to care about the lives of those innocent people. She didn't want to commit more murders, but her premise was that Xiao AI was still alive, safe, healthy, and happy. If this is the only premise, and she can't do it, what's the point of Su Su living so kindly? Whether she is a human or a demon depends on whether Lu Yin follows the rules. Liang stepped back step by step, her face pale and a layer of sweat oozing out of her forehead. It had nothing to do with whether the weather was warm or not, but the water energy around Su Su, which was sweeping towards her like a tidal wave. Liang felt like she was about to drown. She barely leaned against the military jeep behind her, her eyes drooping, holding her breath, not daring to stare at Su Su. Su Su had already approached Liang, ignoring the soldier who was rolling around on the ground holding his broken arm and wailing, as well as the 4 researchers who were terrified. She reached out and pinched Liang's chin, almost crushing it, and asked quietly, "Liang, I know you always know what to do. Why don't you tell me the truth? What exactly is Lu Yin planning?" "He plans to wait for you to give birth to the child, so that he can control the child and tie you and you down."
Oh.
As expected, Su Su sneered, with a silver light in her eyes. She slid her 5 fingers down and pinched Liang's neck hard, sneering, "That's fine. We're going to have to fight this sooner or later anyway. I'll sacrifice you 2 first. Can't wait for Yi Yu to see if the eagle-watching plan succeeded." Su Su was so angry because someone pointed a gun at her stomach today that she felt that she couldn't calm down unless she killed 1 or 2 people. Wang Zijiao was going to die, and Liang was going to die too. "Please let me go." Li Ying's eyes rolled up, and she had difficulty breathing. She begged with great difficulty, "I won't do it again."
I'm sorry, so.
If saying sorry was useful, Xiao AI would not have been missing for 10 years and still could not be found. Su Su didn't want to cause trouble in this life. She really didn't want to. She just wanted to live her life well and live in peace with her parents and children in a corner, but these people just had to come to her door and force her to kill. It doesn't matter, just go on a killing spree. She does it very smoothly. In the Golden Bell, Wang Zijiao seemed to realize that Liang outside was in danger and increased the strength to break the bell. The special forces outside laughed and played with mice. When Wang Zijiao was about to break out of the bell, they added a thicker and bigger cover. Li Ying's face began to turn the color of crimson pig liver. Her eyes rolled up, and she was about to suffocate to death. In the distance, 2 roosters clucked in joy as they ran into the small yard and lowered their heads to eat the blood on the ground. Su Su pinched Li Ying's neck with one hand and protected her stomach with the other. She listened carefully and thought that the two ordinary mutant chickens that she had never taken care of since she tied them up were making strange noises. She looked down and saw the white worms in the mouths of the two chickens. They were very strange. The bodies were the size of earthworms. They twisted around for 2 or 3 times and were eaten by the two chickens. The key point was, how did Su see a scarlet spot in a flash? The scarlet spot, with the white body, looked strangely familiar. With his thoughts interrupted, Su loosened his grip on Li Ying's neck, retracted the water energy that permeated his body, turned around expressionlessly, and approached the two chickens that were eating insects, intending to see what was going on. However, the chickens seemed to think that Su was not someone to be trifled with and ran away with the instinct to avoid danger and seek good fortune. Behind Su, Li Ying was unknown whether dead or not. She slid down from the military jeep and sat limply on the ground. Her face was crimson purple. She held her breath for a long while before she suddenly gasped for breath, as if she had reached the shore. Go back and find some doctors with better medical skills to fix your wrist. It may be fixed. Su walked forward, loudly bidding them farewell. She walked in a hurry, as if she had discovered something very important. She felt that the worms in the mouths of the two chickens looked like the mutated maggots she had seen deep in the villa area a few months ago. If she killed Li Ying and Wang Zijiao now, leaving two corpses without burning them, or if she managed to burn them but they didn't turn into ashes, it would be a big trouble. While walking quickly, Su grabbed Su's mother's hand and brought her back to the villa. When the Special Forces soldier who trapped Wang Zijiao saw that Su was not going to sacrifice himself, he also retracted his golden bell cover and waited for Wang Zijiao to rush out. Li Ying rushed forward with both hands and feet, climbed up and hugged Wang Zijiao, who was about to fight, and whispered, "Go back, don't mess with her. She is a lunatic." Li Ying saw it, she really saw it just now. Although it was difficult to explain, Li Ying completely understood Su in that instant. Under Su's pure and delicate appearance, there lived a demon who had lost her humanity. The one who kept this demon from causing trouble was the child in her belly. This was a person who was even more difficult to mess with than Yiyu. No matter how wild, arrogant, or unruly Yiyu is, that is his nature, and he still has ethics in his blood. Maybe he is unwilling to hand over supplies and is unwilling to cooperate with the inspection of the safe zone, but he still has order and rules in his mind, and knows not to implicate innocent people. But Su didn't do that. She was just a lunatic who was barely wearing a human skin for the sake of her child. Her order and rules were only based on her desire to settle down. Don't think that she abides by the rules of the safe zone more than Yiyu. Once she is unwilling to abide by them, the lives of others are no longer life to her. Li Ying grabbed Wang Zijiao and got into the car. She drove the car and turned around to drive outside the city wall. At this time, she had no time to care about the 4 researchers and the 4 soldiers with broken wrists who were lying on the ground and wailing. Li Ying was so scared that her brows were tightly knitted. All the way out of the Apple Villa district, she had only one thought in her mind: I can't go down the same road with Lu Yin. She always knows how to adapt to the current situation. Su was right in saying this. After seeing Su's true face today and being forced to reveal Lu Yin's plan to Su, she understood that Lu Yin's plan to control Su's child and control Su and Yi would never come to fruition. So Li Ying naturally couldn't get involved with someone who was bound to fail. Beside her, Wang Zijiao, who had not yet figured out what had happened, had a look of hidden concern on his resolute face. He looked at Li Ying, who was driving at full speed, and was still wondering in his heart what had happened in just a short while ago, and why Li Ying was so scared. Li Ying stopped the car in an alley with less traffic, staring straight ahead, holding the steering wheel with both hands, her knuckles turning bluish-white. Just as she was thinking about which team of superpowers could provide her with shelter in the current safe zone, a handkerchief suddenly covered her face. Li Ying turned around and saw Wang Zijiao holding a handkerchief with an unspeakable affection in his eyes, wiping her face carefully. "There are blood beads oozing out. Let me wipe it for you." Li Ying, who was sitting in the driver's seat, tilted her face, looked into Wang Ziqiao's eyes, and smiled instantly. She reached out her hand, touched Wang Ziqiao's fingers with her cold fingers, and took Wang Ziqiao's handkerchief. The moment she saw Wang Ziqiao's eyes, Li Ying suddenly had an idea in her mind. It is no use following Lu Yin, who is bound to fail. Fortunately, Wang Ziqiao is Lu Yin's right-hand man. He can lead a lot of soldiers. If they are integrated, they will be a strong guarantee. Why not build a good relationship with Wang Ziqiao now? If Lu Yin fails in the future, she can pull Wang Ziqiao to set up a new company. Thinking of this, Li Ying's smile towards Wang Ziqiao became even sweeter. Meanwhile, in the Apple Villa area, Su dragged her mother back to the villa quickly, and the others also dispersed in twos and threes, leaving the researchers and the soldiers with broken wrists wailing, not knowing what to do. One researcher hurriedly got into the car and drove away. The world outside the laboratory was really too dangerous. How could these unarmed researchers face such plunder and brutality alone? So he ignored the soldiers with broken wrists and drove away. Seeing this, the other 3 researchers also turned around and got into the car and ran away for their lives. For soldiers were left unattended, rolling around on the ground, with blood all over the floor. Zhuo Shijia couldn't bear to watch it any longer, so he called Liang Xiaoqi and several other young nurses to help these soldiers with their broken wrists. Zhuo Shijia can perform some simple surgical operations, such as suturing a person's belly, but she is not very good at performing more complicated operations, such as reattaching severed limbs. This requires professional orthopedic surgeons, vascular surgeons, and neurologists to cooperate with each other to perform the operation. But in this world, it is hard to find doctors and nurses, so where can we find professional doctors who can reattach severed limbs? She could only sharpen her knife temporarily. Although she was an obstetrician and gynecologist, she worked part-time as a general practitioner, frowning and helping people reattach severed limbs. There was a pool of blood on the ground. When the bright sun shone on it, the smell of blood was extremely strong. Soon, the ground was covered with white maggots that looked like earthworms. In the villa, Su grabbed her mother and quickly said, "Mom, pack up quickly. Take what you can take with you. If you can't take it with you, don't take it. The maggot tide is coming." In fact, Su's mother should have gone out with Brother Pai's car this morning, but Su's mother was still worried that the things in the villa had not been packed. Su also thought that Bafang village was not very safe, so she planned to keep Su's mother here. A few days in the safe zone. But even though she just glanced at the earthworms in the mouths of the 2 chickens, she looked very familiar. After a moment of thought, she thought of the mutated maggots after the apocalypse. Those things were so abnormal that they were not affected by Yi's fire. Even if the root is burned off, it still grows to such a big size. One of the most striking features of mutated animals is that there are so many of them, so many that it's mind-numbing. They attack humans in different levels. The ones that come out first are the lowest level, low-level mutations. The animals are almost exhausted, and those high-level mutant animals will be late. The 2 chickens in Su's family were an exception among exceptions. Maybe the 2 chickens were not interested in doing that kind of thing, or maybe the rooster had been castrated. In any case, the 2 chickens could not reproduce, so there were not so many offspring. The maggots are different. They have grown to the size of earthworms. It is conceivable that the heads of the high-level maggots hiding in the back will be even bigger. So, if Su doesn't leave now, when will he leave? Given the situation today, she showed off her power in front of Wang Zijiao and Li Ying, but she was afraid that they would not have many days to live in peace in this safe zone in the future. She did not let Li Ying go because she was soft-hearted, but she was thinking that if Yi was not here today, she would kill Li Ying and Wang Zijiao, leaving these 2 bodies unmanageable. 2 more corpses would give the maggots 1 more bite to eat. Then, the maggots would rush to her small square for these 2 corpses. What a blessing! Therefore, it would be better for her to send Su's mother out as soon as possible. Although life in Bafang village was not as smooth as in the safe zone, at least there was no threat from Lu Yin and maggots. After explaining everything to Su's mother, Su turned around and walked out, protecting her belly. The 2 chickens came back clucking again. From a distance, they were indeed pecking at the blood on the ground. But when Su took a closer look, she was shocked as expected. In the pool of blood, there were wriggling worms as big as earthworms, which were actually maggots, red and white, and seemed to be rolling around in the blood. They really all came to me. Su took a step back and looked left and right. White maggots, like earthworms, kept crawling outside the city wall. They seemed to be called by the smell of blood and rushed in recklessly. Many of the larger maggots were like snakes, about as thick as a baby's arm. They were no longer satisfied with licking the blood on the ground and twisted their heads towards the 2 chickens that were eating the maggots. It happened in a flash. Su raised her hand and several thin pieces of ice fell down, directly cutting the snake-like maggot in the front into several pieces. However, in an instant, the maggot that was cut into several pieces was attacked by the earthworm like small maggots around it and was torn into pieces and eaten. At the same time, the 2 chickens finally realized that they were outnumbered and that it would be impossible for them to eat so many maggots even if they ate until they died of stuffiness. So they flapped their wings and found safe areas to hide. And right next to the Su family's wall, there was a circle of mutant bushes planted, each of which excitedly grew sharp thorns. From a distance, they looked like green hedgehogs, waiting for the blind mutant maggots to pounce on them so that they could be eaten. Oh my God! What's going on? The Special Forces, Brother Pai's subordinates, and the psychics who were recuperating from the wounded, who heard the noise, ran out from their respective villas. Su waved her hand, and a piece of white ice spread out from under her feet. With the crackling sound of the ice, she froze all the mutated maggots on the small square. It seemed that except for the 2 mutant chickens that were almost besieged by the maggots, there was no living thing on the small square. Su looked at the mutant maggots crawling densely outside the small square, and frowned, and said to those who ran out, "Organize, there are mutant maggots in the Apple Villa area, and they are estimated to be between the beginning of mutation and normal mutation." Yes. The first to react were the special forces left behind by Yu. They walked forward on the road paved with white ice and ran towards the mutant maggots that were sliding on the trail. Those maggots the size of earthworms were still the larvae that were about to mutate and had no crystal cores in their bodies. The mutant maggots the size of a baby's arm were ordinary mutated maggots. Although they were a bit disgusting, Su still took an ice knife and dug out a crystal core the size of a pomegranate seed from the brain of the frozen, ordinary mutant maggot. I guessed right, it's just a common mutation. You dig those earthworm-like maggots out of the ice and feed them. Su turned around and pointed with her ice knife at the thorny bushes that grew along the Su family's wall and continued to grow along the city wall, resulting in a circle of mutant bushes growing at the base of the city wall. Coincidentally, this mutant bush was transplanted from the place where she found the maggots. Seeing the excitement of these mutant bushes, it seems that they have been waiting for this day. In this world, everything is interdependent. The rise of a species must be the demise of a species. When a species appears, there must be a species that counteracts it. This kind of thing is very common in the end times. Zombies appear, and superpowers counteract them. When mutant maggots appear, it is not surprising that bushes covered with thorns will appear where they exist. Brother Pai's gangsters had already mastered the knife skills when digging out the crystal cores in the zombies' brains. They had already done research on how to dig out the crystal cores quickly to save time, how to make the hole in the brain beautiful and round, and how to reduce the degree of nausea. So digging out earthworm-like maggots in the ice was not a difficult task for them. Each of the gangsters had a tool bag tied around his waist. They first took out a hammer to break the ice on the ground, and then took a special small metal shovel to shovel. On the shovel were several maggots covered with ice. The gangsters casually threw the frozen maggots onto the bushes near the wall. The bushes excitedly grew more and denser thorns, which directly pierced the ice on the maggots' bodies and madly absorbed the flesh and blood in the maggots' bodies. After a while, only an ice shell was left hanging on the thorns of the bushes. Su stood there and watched the magical insect hunting process in the bushes for a while, then turned around expressionlessly and entered the Su family villa. As soon as she walked in, Su's mother came out in a hurry and said to Su, Su, there's still a lot of gas tanks in the basement. How can we take them away? It's okay if you can't take it with you. It won't matter if you have the gas tanks or not. Please stay in this villa first and don't go anywhere. I'll go out and check the situation. Su changed into a pair of breathable running shoes suitable for running and jumping at the entrance, turned around, and walked out of the door. Her mother stamped her feet anxiously behind her and shouted, Su, don't go. I just saw a lot of bugs outside on the second-floor balcony. You stay in the villa and wait for Yu to come and save us.
Mom. Shushu stopped walking.
She stood outside the door. There was a layer of white frost on the back of her snow-white neck. Su turned around and looked at her mother, who was standing inside the door and was about to cry. She said again, you just stay at home. It's safe here. Wait for Yu to come and save you. She thought that she still couldn't do something like waiting for others to rescue her, even though Yu would definitely come to rescue her. But if a person didn't fight hard first and waited for others to rescue her from the very beginning, it was really not in line with the rules of survival in the apocalypse. What's more, it's not the time to fight yet. These are just a few low-level maggots. Even though there are many of them, it's far from enough to make her feel tired. Su. Seeing Su walking out of the iron gate with a bulging belly, Su's mother hurriedly chased after her. As soon as she walked out of the gate of the villa, she suddenly remembered what Su's father had said. In the current situation, she and Su's father were a burden to Su, so they should stop disobeying arrangements and causing trouble for Su. So Su's mother could only shrink back and wait for Su to come back with full of worry. Su walked out with a bulging belly. She glanced at the gangsters who were busy bending over and digging maggots from the ice in the small square. She deliberately walked around the wall built by Su's father. She found that although there were no maggots on the thorns of the bushes under the wall, each one of them was more lush than the bushes under the Su's wall.
This isn't right.
When Su transplanted the first bush, she planted it under the wall of her house. Logically, this first bush should be more lush than the descendants that grew after it, right? Su thought about it, and she clenched her hands in the air, and a shovel made of ice appeared in her hand. She put the ice shovel to her side, and a crystal-clear water man gathered and took shape. It took her ice shovel and began to dig the soil under its feet. Soon, the answer was revealed. Since some time ago, under the soil of the city wall, under a layer of soil about half a foot thick, there was densely packed with fine roots of bushes. The white shells were mixed in the black soil. After a long period of corrosion, they would soon become part of the soil. But Su was not surprised by this, but by the fact that there were so many maggots in the Apple Villa area since when. Her heart, which had been suppressed for a long time, was relieved after seeing these insect shells. It seemed that what humans fear most is unknown dangers. Now that she had found the root cause of her depression, she was completely relieved. Reassured, Su roughly assessed the current situation in her heart, then turned around and walked quickly to the courtyard of the medical building and said to the worried nurse Liang Xiaoqi in the courtyard, "It's very safe inside the city wall. You will die if you go out of the city wall. Remember what I said, no one should go out to take risks. If you have nothing to do, gather all the babies together. When Yu comes, you will be ready to retreat."
But
Dr. Zhua is still operating on the 4 soldiers with broken arms. Liang Xiaoqi looked a little embarrassed, not knowing whether it was right or wrong to say this in front of Su. After all, it was Su who cut off the hands of the 4 soldiers. Su cut off the hands, and Zhua Shijia put the hands back. Why did this feel a bit like betrayal to Su? Who knew that? Su nodded, and although there was no expression on her delicate and fair face, she was still very understanding and said, "Take it, they just stood on the wrong side, and they didn't do anything big." The 2 forces were fighting fiercely, and those soldiers were originally victims without any opinions of their own. Zhua Shijia wanted to rescue them, so he rescued them. However, after rescuing them, Su did not intend to let the 4 of them go back. Now that Bafang village was in need of laborers, it was just right for them to be sent to Su's father to work as laborers. After explaining everything to Liang Xiaoqi, Su stepped on the broken ice and walked outside the city wall. At this time, the people left by Yi Yu and the few psychics who were recuperating in the Apple Villa area had all rushed out. In the distance, in addition to the sound of psychic special effects, some shouting for help could be heard. It might be the group of survivors around Xie Qingyan who were calling for help, but Su Su glanced around and did not see any survivors running toward her. She thought that they might have been engulfed by the maggots as soon as they ran out of the door. There is no doubt that the speed at which these mutant animals eat people is absolutely unimaginable. Not far away, those few psychics with injuries on their bodies seemed to have never seen such big maggots, nor did they expect that there would be so many maggots. They were almost everywhere, and from time to time they turned out from the mud on the side of the path. They all behaved in a panic. Su Su, watching from a distance, felt that none of them had exerted the power that a psychic should have. Instead, they almost died in the maggot tide several times. If it weren't for the psychics left by Yi Yu, who came to rescue them from time to time, these injured psychics would have died long ago. Su Su stood outside the fence and turned around. She found that there were 3 roads in front of the hole left by the fence built by Su's father. The only place without mutant bushes was this hole. The endless white maggots almost filled the flower beds beside the path and were wriggling to rush into the hole. Yi Yu's men and the injured psychics were scattered at the 3 openings to block the maggots. The people and the maggots were in a stalemate here. Soon, several military trucks drove up on the main road leading to the gate of the villa area. Those military trucks were full of soldiers with guns. Maybe the eagle in the sky saw the maggot tide, or maybe Lu Yin heard Wang Zijiao's report that Su Su had injured the soldiers, so Lu Yin planned to come and seek revenge. Anyway, he specially sent 4 trucks of ordinary soldiers, but I don't know what the use is. The 4 military trucks stopped at a great distance. They seemed to have noticed the mutant maggots in the Apple Villa area. There were so many of them that it was unimaginable. Someone on the truck shouted to retreat, but they had not started to retreat yet. Around the last truck, a huge swarm of mutant maggots gathered again. How many mutant maggots were there? Layer upon layer, layer upon layer, as if the land could no longer hold them. They were so hungry that they ate their own kind while rolling towards the truck, slowly engulfing half of the truck's tires. These soldiers of Lu Yin were all ordinary people, not supernatural beings. When they saw the white maggots the size of earthworms about to crawl into the truck bed, the soldiers who were sent by Lu Yin for some unknown purpose began to shoot. With the sound of pop, a common mutant maggot that had successfully mutated and was as thick as a baby's arm suddenly rolled out from the wave of maggots. Like a small snake, it swam up to the cockpit of the front of the truck at an extremely fast speed. One of the 2 soldiers sitting in the cockpit was facing the maggot. He watched helplessly as the maggot crawled into the glass window, opened its scarlet mouth towards him, bit his eyeball, and then slid into his brain while shaking its tail. In just 2 or 3 seconds, his head exploded, as if his brain was filled with tiny maggots that could not fit in, and finally continued to replicate and multiply, eventually bursting his tiny brain apart. There were many white, earthworm-like maggots that kept coming out from the broken neck. The broken neck moved down little by little, and soon the whole person was eaten by the maggots. The soldier sitting next to him had no idea how to react. By the time he reacted, he was surrounded by wriggling little maggots, each as big as a grain of rice, and many of them had crawled onto the soldier's body. The soldier screamed and slapped the maggots on his body, opened the car door, and was about to jump out of the car to escape from the cockpit full of maggots, but many maggots had already drilled into his exposed skin. The soldier screamed and fell out of the open car door into the sea of maggots and died in an instant. Su Su happened to see this scene. She looked up at the sky. It was almost afternoon. Yu hadn't come back yet. Maybe he didn't go well when he went out to look for medicine last night? How was Pai Ge? I wonder if Pai Ge and her father arrived at Bafeng village safely? Sighing, Su Su lowered her head and felt that surviving in the end of the world was neither right nor wrong. It was dangerous to let her parents leave the Apple Villa district. It was also dangerous to let her parents stay in the Apple Villa district. There was no way to go up to heaven or down to earth.
How could this be? Susu's heart suddenly moved.
She couldn't help but get angry. She raised her hands, her face was grim, and her palms became claws and smashed them on the ground. Two streams of ice energy shining with silver light poured out from her hands and smashed on the ground. With her feet as the center, the white ice layer spread out in all directions in a circle. Soon, the maggots that had surged over the tires of the military trucks were frozen into ice sculptures. The road surface, the flower beds, and the woods on the roadside were all frozen. This world instantly became a world of ice and snow. Looking around, everything was covered with a layer of white ice. The temperature suddenly dropped several degrees, causing everyone who had already changed into light clothes to shiver suddenly. A large area of the ground was frozen by Su, and the few maggots that were not frozen on the ground were also killed by the special forces and injured psychics, including the remnants in the cockpit of the military truck. On the truck bed, those soldiers who had no idea what they were doing there were finally saved. They just breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone just breathed a sigh of relief, but then they discovered that maggots were starting to flip out of the land far outside the ice again. From a distance, the white maggots were like a wave, forming a line and covering the ice. Even Su took a step back. No matter how powerful her ability is, it is only at the 3rd level. It is impossible for her to freeze the road surface of the entire safe zone. As long as these mutant maggots come into contact with flesh and blood, their reproduction speed is simply terrifying. According to Su's experience, the existence range of these maggots is probably already spread throughout the entire safe zone. Could it be that Lu Yin couldn't even build a base in his lifetime, and he would have to die here in a safe zone? As she was thinking about this, the soldiers on the truck crawled down from the truck bed and rushed towards Su. She frowned, reached out and grabbed a soldier, and said sternly, "Why are you running? Why don't you find a way to notify Lu Yin to sound the alarm and organize people to retreat?" The maggot tide in the Apple Villa area was more numerous than Su had imagined, but she had seen such a large tide of mutant animals before, so she did not feel too panicked. According to her experience, the maggot tide in the Apple Villa area was by no means just an isolated phenomenon in certain areas. At this critical moment, those in power should have stopped the unarmed survivors from retreating quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, an eagle's cry sounded in the sky. Su let go of the soldier in his hand and sneered, "No need. Lu Yin already knows." She forgot that Lu Yin's eagle could see it, so Lu Yin must have known it. Did he send these 4 truckloads of ordinary soldiers? Did he think that he could solve the maggot crisis with just these 4 truckloads of ordinary soldiers? Or was it for the matter of Wang Zijiao and Liang? It was unknown. What we know is that the soldiers in the 4 trucks all ran behind Su. Su was helpless as they were all ordinary people. They could not deal with these mutant maggots with extremely strong reproductive ability and huge numbers. Forcing these people to go forward and shoot would only provide food for these maggots. She could only guard these 3 roads with the special forces and the 5 injured psychics, and the alarm in the sky had not been sounded. Su frowned and released her ice power for a long time, and she probably understood Lu Yin's intention. He was consuming her and also using her to deal with these maggots. Judging from this level, it seemed that all the mutant maggots came to her place and did not spread outside the Apple Villa area.
Why?
Because the Apple Villa area was the nest of mutant maggots. Those mutant maggots ate all kinds of rats and cockroaches underground. Now there was nothing to eat, so they could only crawl out and expose their whereabouts. In any case, Su and her psychics could still deal with these maggots that were about to mutate and those that were mutated normally. They could hold on for a few days, but the ice layer was frozen layer by layer and Lu Yin never sent the psychic vanguard to help, which was a bit annoying. In the distance, in a tall building, many psychics were standing or sitting in the rooms. One of them was holding a high-powered telescope and was looking at the Apple Villa district by the window. He turned around and gave a thumbs up to Xia Yaoshi, who was standing behind him with his hands behind his back, and said, "Captain, they held on." Su's psychic ability actually mutated a second time and became an ice psychic ability. Xia Yaoshi was originally walking around, but when he heard what Su Xiaofeng said, He stopped and nodded sternly. He should have known that Su Su would not be defeated by such a low-level mutant maggot. Now that he had received Su Xiaofeng's confirmation, he felt more relieved and asked again. Look over there in the safe zone. Has Yu come out? He just entered the safe zone's defense line. It will take at least 2 hours for him to come out. Su Xiaofeng shook his head, put his eyes on the high-powered telescope, and moved the lens to the west. He just saw Yu in the west, who was standing in the defense line with his arms folded, with a few Special Forces soldiers, with a smelly face, waiting for the 2-hour observation period to pass. So Su Xiaofeng smiled and said, Captain, I think Su Su can hold out for another 2 hours. Yu really can't make it in time. It will be the same if we lead the troops to charge into the Apple Villa district. Have you forgotten the order that Lu Yin just gave? Zhang Anquan walked past Su Xiaofeng, leaned against the window, and looked towards the direction of the Apple Villa district with a gloomy face. The Superpower Vanguard team and anyone in the troops are not allowed to interfere with anything in the Apple Villa district. We can rush in to save people, but now we are exposing ourselves. It won't be so easy to kill Lu Yin in the future. To be honest, Lu Yin's behavior really makes people feel more and more disgusted. From the discovery of maggots to the time when Su Su and others killed the maggots in the Apple Villa area for such a long time, Lu Yin never issued any rescue order. The soldiers in those 4 trucks were the ones Lu Yin had sent to get back the cause after Wang Zijiao and Li Ying were nearly killed by Su Su. However, they failed to get back the cause and then encountered a maggot tide. Lu Yin simply gave up and turned a blind eye, allowing the maggot tide to consume Su Su. In order not to alert Yu, who was far away in the safe zone defense line, he deliberately did not sound the alarm. He was betting that within the 2 hours of Yu's observation period, Su Su would be consumed by the maggots, and then Lu Yin would send someone to pretend to rescue her and capture Su Su and her baby. If Su Su still persisted after 2 hours, he would get a free laborer to help him eliminate the maggots in the safe zone. Even if Yu came out of the defense line, it didn't matter. Lu Yin would just have another laborer to eliminate the maggots. He won't send anyone to rescue us anyway. So this Lu Yin never thought that those mutant maggots would crawl out of the Apple Villa district? Su Xiaofeng se ne gon li. He was not very happy with Lu Yin's pettiness. But it would be soon. He just had to bribe all the 300 superpowers in the Superpower Vanguard team. Then they would not have to listen to Lu Yin's orders. Then he would bring those 300 superpowers with him and build another safe zone opposite Lu Yin's safe zone. I asked you to find out before. Where did Chu Xian hide the families of those people with special abilities? Did you find out? The person who said this was Xie Yaoshi. He stopped walking around, sat on the sofa in the room, lifted up one of his long legs, supported his forehead with his slender fingers, looked at Zhang Anquan who was standing by the glass window, and asked. Zhang Anquan shook his head with a gloomy face. Chu Xian's mouth is too tight. We can't pry it out, but we have gradually learned from others where some insignificant hostages are kept. Where should we put these hostages? It is said that there are 4 pregnant women. We are doing something big, so we don't want to bring pregnant women, the elderly, and children with us, right? Send it to Su Su. Su Xiaofeng, who was still looking at the Apple Villa district with a high-powered telescope, happened to see several nurses, a man and a woman carrying a baby from one building to another inside the wall built by Su's father, so he smiled again. Su has everything, and there is Yu's group of high-level psychics as guards. It is a holy place for recuperation. We will get those hostages out one by one and send them to Su for custody. It's too eye-catching in the Apple Villa district. Zhang Anquan shook his head and rejected Su Xiaofeng's proposal. Xie Yaoshi, who was sitting on the sofa, smiled and said, Didn't you notice that they have been moving things outside recently? There are 18 superpowers, 19 gangsters, a gangster boss, 3 doctors and 5 nurses, but only 5 superpowers, 5 gangsters, 2 doctors and 4 nurses are left in the villa area. Most importantly, Su's parents, her mother stayed in the villa, but her father was sent out. Most of these people have gone out. Zhang Anquan nodded suddenly, and suddenly said, Father Su is good at building walls? Was he sent out to build walls? This is great. They were just worrying about where to send the families of the 300 superpowers after they had been stolen out one after another. Su had set up a new nest outside, which made it convenient for them to release the hostages. But where was the nest set up by Su and the others? After so long, had they made any progress? Opposite this group of people, on another high-rise building outside the safe zone, a Special Forces soldier was fully armed and also had a high-powered telescope in front of him. However, their telescope was much smaller and more sophisticated than the one Xia Yaoshe had. It seemed like it could be easily disassembled into several parts and put in a pocket to take away. He was watching the sky above the safe zone, and suddenly he shouted to the 3 men in the tent behind him, "Hurry! The eagle is acting a little abnormal today. What's wrong? What happened?" And after watching for so many days, the eagle is finally tired and wants to go back to the nest? The 3 people who were lying in the tent and preparing to rest immediately jumped out and moved to the high-power telescope. One of them leaned forward to take a look and slapped his thigh. "It's really abnormal. It keeps flying around above the Apple Villa district. What does it want to do?" Something happened, something serious happened. Someone nearby shouted, hurry up, inform Ibeopi, something happened to Su. I'll send a wireless message right away." One of them immediately turned around and entered the tent, lifted the quilt, revealing a small and exquisite radio communication equipment terminal, and began to radio Yiyu. Nowadays, the mobile phone signal has long disappeared, and the only thing floating in the sky is the military wireless short and long waves like theirs. Instantly, the beep, beep sound of a telegraph was heard. The rhythm was a bit chaotic, but it all revealed a sense of tension. It made people feel that listening to such a sound, their whole body was tense. At the same time, outside the Apple Villa district, Li Ying, who had already started an ambiguous relationship with Wang Zijiao, sat in the car, looking at the gate of the Apple Villa district with a pair of eyeliner eyes. There was obvious worry on her face. After a while, a soldier trotted over, stood by Li Ying's car window, and saluted Li Ying in the car. Wang Zijiao, who was sitting in the passenger seat, rolled down the window and said in a deep voice, "Speak. There are too many mutant maggots in the Apple Villa area. All the survivors from Xie Qingyan's side who can run have run away. Those who can't escape have already run away. Those who couldn't escape naturally became food for the mutated maggots. The mutated maggots ate people too quickly. After eating a person, they would choose the next target nearby. They all went towards Su because the scent of living people was closer to Su, and also because many maggot corpses had accumulated there. But sooner or later they will find that maybe crawling outside the Apple Villa area will make it easier to get food. Is Yiyu still staying in the safety line in the north?" Wang Zijiao tilted his head and looked at the soldier outside the car window. After receiving the soldier's affirmation, he frowned. Li Ying beside him smiled and asked, "Yiyu's fire is useful. It burns the bodies of the mutant maggots to pieces. Naturally, there is no food for the maggots. By then, the number of mutant maggots will be reduced as they are killed. Although it is said that there are also fire-type psychics among the psychics who stayed with Su, they seem to be very useless. The fire is exhausted after just a few strokes, and the maggots are burned faster than they reproduce. Therefore, this large area of maggot tide can only be dealt with by sending out high-level fire-type psychics like Yiyu. It's a pity that the commander didn't think of this. Don't be too surprised that Su's ability had mutated into an ice ability at some point. The current situation is that although Su can freeze the maggots that are about to mutate or have already mutated into ordinary levels, the frozen layer in the Apple Villa area is already piling up layer by layer, getting higher and higher. And maggots can eat maggots. Many maggots were crawling towards Su while eating themselves. The small maggots ate the big maggots and reproduced countless smaller maggots. In short, when there was food to eat, they reproduced in large numbers and at a very fast speed. When there was no food to eat, they could still reproduce and continue to evolve. Sooner or later those maggots will crawl out of the Apple Villa area. Unfortunately, at such a critical moment, Lu Yin was only thinking about consuming Su. He ordered everyone to wait outside the Apple Villa district and not move, completely disregarding the overall situation. He did not think about how much impact Su Su would have on the entire safe zone if these maggots ran out of the Apple Villa district. Our commander is a bit selfish, if I may say so. Li Ying, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was still whispering in Wang Zijiao's ear. Wang Zijiao was different from Lu Yin. Although he was also hard-hearted, he was still a person who cared about the people of the world. As long as Li Ying pointed out Lu Yin's shortcomings in front of Wang Zijiao, it would be easy for Wang Zijiao to become alienated from Lu Yin. Not far from Li Ying and Wang Zijiao, Chu Xian stood on the street with a frown on his face, looking at the deserted gate of Apple Villa district. Behind him, there was a police station before the end of the world, and it became the headquarters of this safe zone after the end of the world. The headquarters was arranging for people to evacuate. Chu Xian looked down at the watch on his wrist, raised his hand, called a soldier, and said, "Go to the Eastern Defense Line, release Yu. Tell him the situation here, and ask him to come as soon as possible." Lu Yin did not take any action. All the forces were getting anxious, but only Chu Xian made the decision very decisively. He released Yu in advance to burn those mutated maggots. With so many people in the safe zone, he did not dare to wait and see, did not dare to gamble, and did not have the intention to consume Su Su. He just simply cherished his life, fearing that Su Su could not hold on and the maggots would spread out of the Apple Villa area. In fact, according to Su Su's current strength, even with a 5-month-old belly, it would not be a problem for her to guard for another 3 days and 3 nights. However, she estimated that she would not be able to hold on for long. Even if Yu did not come, someone in such a small safe zone would be anxious. Time passed by minute as multiple parties waited and watched each other in a stalemate and gambling. In the Apple Villa area, Su Su and the special forces and injured psychics held out for only about an hour. The last wave of maggots surged in, and they declared a temporary truce in Yi Yu's Sea of Fire. Xia Yaoshi, Li Ying, Wang Zijiao, Chu Xian, and other forces watching the battle all breathed a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Su Su would not be able to hold back these mutated maggots, and that these maggots would crawl out of the Apple Villa district. Fortunately, Yu came and burned the last wave of maggots with a fire. Originally, Yu and his brothers had been tinkering with medicine outside the safe zone all night last night, because the medicines he wanted to find for Su Su were all very targeted. They were medicines that could only be taken during pregnancy and had to be within their expiration dates, so he had to be more specialized in his selection. When finding a pharmacy, he couldn't simply take all the medicines on the shelf. He had to read the instructions for each bottle, which was a waste of time. So it was not until noon that Yu and his men returned. According to the radio transmission from the brothers who were guarding Bafang village, Brother Pai had already brought Su's father to Bafang village in the morning. Yi wanted to go back to the safe zone to see Su Su and give her the medicine, so he had to rush to Bafang village to check. So the 2 hours of guarding the defense line could almost cost him his life. He was considering whether to rush into the safe zone, but then a few people came and said a few words to the soldiers guarding the defense line, and those soldiers let Yu into the safe zone in advance. At this moment, Yu's watch displayed a string of garbled codes that only he could understand. It was at this moment that he realized that something had happened in the Apple Villa district. He and his brothers rushed to the Apple Villa district in a hurry, just in time to see a dense layer of maggots slowly moving towards the gate of the Apple Villa district. But more maggots crawled towards the direction of ice, because some ice layers are thinner and they can easily bite through the thin ice layer and eat the frozen maggots inside. Yi was horrified and felt extremely angry. He drove all the way to the city wall of Su Su's house, setting fires along the way, causing flames to burn everywhere. After a while, he came to Su Su like a fire god in camouflage clothes, stepping on the flames. Su Su was wearing a light blue baby doll outfit. Because she had been standing for too long, her waist couldn't bear the pressure. The pain at the place where her thighs connected to her pelvis made her feel uncomfortable, so she sat on an ice chair. She wanted to put on a comfortable expression and look up at Yu, but she suddenly felt that it was difficult to breathe. She took a few quick breaths and gave Yu an ugly smile. "You're back?" The fetus was growing in the mother's belly, and the mother's internal organs were shifting to make room for the baby. So Sue's waist hurt when she stood, and her breathing was difficult when she sat. She felt really uncomfortable. She only thought that if Yu didn't come back, she would have to clean up and get a recliner. Seeing Sue's ugly face, Yu leaned over and hugged her. He was so angry that his eyes were about to burst into flames. He asked with a trembling body, "Are you okay? I'm here. Don't be afraid." He should never have thought that the so-called safe zone was safer than Bafong village. He actually took away most of the psychics and left Su alone in this ghost place. Look how quiet it was outside. Such a big thing happened in the Apple Villa district, but no one came in to lend a helping hand to a pregnant woman. This shows how fickle the world is and how human nature is fickle. Although Yu was a fire-type psychic, his heart was chilled at the moment. He didn't want to say any more words. He had understood what he should have understood when he was in the city. He picked up Su with trembling hands and walked quickly back to the city wall. Seeing this, the other psychics didn't care about the ice and snow outside and followed Yu into the city wall. "Pack up and let's get out of here. What's the point of staying in such a broken safe zone?" Yu tilted his head, holding Su and telling one of his brothers. His brother nodded, with a very angry expression on his face, and turned around to pack up. Not only him, but everyone else looked unhappy, including the 4 trucks of soldiers sent by Lu Yin to get back the place. But at this moment, who has the mood to care about these 4 trucks of soldiers? Naturally, they should do what they should do. The 4 trucks of soldiers who had just been rescued looked at each other, not knowing whether to leave or stay, and could only stand in the small square in a daze.
Seeing Yeike's indignant look, Su sighed.
She felt that it was getting harder and harder to breathe in Yu's arms. She struggled to jump out of Yu's arms and propped up her slightly bloated waist. She thought that this was a good thing. Although Lu Yin might not be willing to let them go, they had encountered so many maggots today, and no one came to help them. If they didn't leave, they would seem very spineless. Just as he was thinking about it, he saw a military jeep driving in on the ice road at the other end of the city wall. Under the illumination of the solar streetlights, it looked extremely lonely. The military jeep came closer from afar and stopped behind the 4 frozen military trucks on the path. Then Chu Xian, dressed in military uniform, walked out of the car. Chu Xian had a smile on his face, as if he was coming to visit. He stepped on the thick ice, which made a crunching sound. The soldiers in the yard saw Chu Xian walking into the city wall, and they all held their guns, lowered their heads, and did not salute, but still made way for Chu Xian, leading directly to Su and Yu. Yu was in a bad mood at the moment. Seeing Chu Xian coming, even though Chu Xian was smiling, he felt extremely annoyed. He pointed at Chu Xian and took a step forward, blocking Su behind him, and yelled, "Get out. Are you here to seek a sense of existence? Look, is this how you treat your benefactor? I used the back door to let you in early, but your attitude is wrong." Chu Xian smiled like a fox, with an expression of repaying a favor, then spread his hands and said to Yu, "Look, I didn't bring any weapons with me. I just came to say hello to Su. Su, are you okay? Are you pregnant? If you have any problem, I will be fine." Su, who was protected by Yu, tilted her head and looked at Chu Xian and rolled her eyes. In front of her, Yu didn't let Chu Xian go because he heard that it was Chu Xian who let him enter the safe zone early. But he still asked angrily, "If you have something to say it quickly. Don't talk nonsense. I'm in a hurry to get on with my journey." "Hey, are you in a hurry? Don't worry. Where are you going with your family?" Glancing at the special forces, psychics, doctors, and nurses who were moving things into the car, Chu Xian sighed in his heart, thinking that Lu Yin's calculation was wrong after all. He originally intended to consume Su in order to take her down, but now not only was Su not consumed, but this powerful team was also alienated. If he had known this would happen, he would have sent some psychics in to give Su a good deal of favor. Where you go is none of your business. This place is inhumane. If you stay here any longer, you'll die sooner or later. That's right, Commander Chu, look at what happened today. How can it not make us feel chilled? If this matter gets out, will there still be people with special abilities willing to stay in your safe zone? That's right. I can't stay here any longer. I want to leave here. The ones who said these words were some of the 5 psychics who stayed with Su Su to recuperate. They had always been very dissatisfied with Lu Yin's decision to charge 50% of the psychic supplies. Today, there was an insect plague in the Apple Villa area, but Lu Yin did not send a single psychic to help. Everyone felt like they were being abandoned after their time had come. Behind Chu Xian, the soldiers from the 4 large trucks were densely packed in the small square, nodding repeatedly, expressing their feelings at the moment. This kind of angry emotion was vented directly towards Chu Xian. Everyone started talking at once and began to express their dissatisfaction with the safe zone. They were really dissatisfied. Chu Xian, who was criticized, smiled all the time. He listened to everyone's venting patiently, then raised his hands, signaling everyone to be quiet, and said to Su Su and Yi Yu in a friendly manner, "Look, it's late at night, and you have elderly people, pregnant women, and children here. It's too difficult to transfer them. If they are all gone at once, Commander Lu Yin will definitely be suspicious. Why don't you be patient and transfer them in batches?" What he said was weird. As a subordinate of Lu Yin, he supported their transfer? Isn't that weird enough? Su Su poked her head out from behind Yu again. And then shoot us one by one? Oh, could I be such a person? Chu Xian had an expression that said, "How could I be such a person? How could you say such things to misunderstand me?" He gave Su Su a glare full of resentment and said half-truthfully, "I am a good person. A truly good person. Don't misunderstand my sincerity. I let you go because I just wanted to do you a favor, right? As the saying goes, if you are in the world, you will inevitably get hurt. If I do more favors for you, I will get hurt less in the future, right?" No one believed Chu Xian's words. Even Lu Yin's 4 truckloads of soldiers no longer believed Chu Xian's words after experiencing the maggot incident. Everyone opened their eyes and looked at Chu Xian, who was standing in the center of the crowd. It was like countless X-rays analyzing Chu Xian inch by inch, 360 degrees without blind spots. So, in an instant, there was a rare moment of silence in the originally bustling small square. No one spoke. Yu originally wanted to tell Chu Xian to get out and stop acting like a fool, but Su Su pulled the corner of his clothes. He pursed his lips tightly, stared at Chu Xian with hatred, and said nothing. Chu Xian was embarrassed and could only say, "Okay, if you really can't trust me, just tie me up. It won't be too late to let me go after you've all moved out." "Hey, this is a good idea." Su Su was inspired. Her eyes lit up. She nodded, pushed Yu, and looked at Chu Xian again. "You said it yourself. Let's tie him up." The man next to Yu handed over a bundle of climbing ropes in a flash. Chu Xian's face froze. Seeing 2 psychics coming up with ropes and really wanting to tie him up, he shouted, "Do you really want to tie you up? I'm just talking to show my sincerity. If we don't really tie you up, it would seem like we are insincere."
Susu similet behind Yeyu.
Although she felt that based on Lu Yin's character, if they really had to fight a life and death battle with them, he probably wouldn't care about Chu Xian's life, but with Chu Xian in her hands, it would be easier to get through it. After tying up Chu Xian, someone brought a piece of rag and was about to stuff it into Chu Xian's mouth. He shook his head, frowned, looked at the rag with disgust, and said, "No need, I won't shout. Just give me a bed to lie down and sleep. Hostages don't get such good treatment. They're tied to a pillar. When they go out, if they meet someone who wants to stop them, they'll hold their heads as hostages." Su Su waved her hand to stop the man from stuffing a rag into Chu Xian's mouth, pointed to the pillar under the grape trellis, turned around and walked into the wall. She happened to see Ruerue, who was almost 3 years old, standing in the crowd. Su Su waved her hand and called Ruerue over. She pinched his sensible face, lowered her head and said softly, "You and Mom, take good care of your brothers and sisters. We are going to start wandering again." Ruerue nodded very hard. He was young and didn't quite understand the ins and outs of the division of forces in such a small safe zone. He just vaguely knew that they were going to move to another place and would not live here anymore. Su's words made those who heard them suddenly feel some sadness of parting. This sad emotion lingered in people's hearts, but was instantly cut off by the anger brought to them by Lu Yin. So, you are now disappointed with the commander? Chu Xian smiled at a soldier standing opposite him, holding a gun and lowering his head. The soldier nodded, tears flashing in his eyes, and a drop of hot tears fell on the back of his foot. He sniffed, raised his hand to wipe away the tears in his eyes, looked at Chu Xian, and said, "Commander Chu, we are all very scared. We really feel useless. I want to retire. Do I need to write an application? In this day and age, what kind of application do you need to write to retire?" There was some indescribable emotion in Chu Xian's eyes. He looked at the soldiers around him, and the smile on his eyes faded. He suddenly said, "If you want to leave, just follow Su and the others. They just want to live a good life. Whose lives are you filling to achieve success and dominate the world? It's your lives. You have already filled them. Just go, and don't come back after you leave." He sounded somewhat desolate, and the sigh in his words was so obvious. Although he was a man determined to achieve great things and dominate the world, it did not prevent Chu Xian from seeing the panic and struggle of those soldiers. Whether Lu Yin succeeded or failed, he would use human lives to expand his territory. Obviously, these soldiers who had been sacrificed once were no longer suitable to follow Lu Yin. They brought emotions with them, and their return would definitely affect the morale of the army. So Chu Xian might as well be a good person and let these people run away with Su and the others. At this moment, Su had returned to the bedroom to pack her things. As the night grew darker, she opened the closet and looked at the closet full of clothes. She felt distressed for no reason. The cold weather had just passed, and the winter down jackets were thick and heavy. It took up a lot of space to take them out, but if she didn't take them, she would have to go out and collect winter clothes again when the next winter came. Forget it, I'd better take maternity clothes and underwear. I don't want to think about it anymore. After thinking about it, I can't leave next year. She tilted her head and saw Yu striding into her bedroom. She asked Su, "Are you done?" "No. Take out the monk's clothes that I stored for Xiao Ai from under my closet." As Su was talking, she pushed out a suitcase from somewhere, sat on the edge of the bed, folded clothes, and stuffed them into the suitcase. He stood up and asked Su, "This one? It's so small. So how big do you think it is?" Seeing Yu's funny look, like a giant King Kong, pinching a monk's robe that was not even half the size of his chest, and comparing it, Su stood up from the bed, walked to Yu, stretched out her hand, grabbed Xiao Ai's clothes, and spat, "Don't mess with my daughter's clothes. You might tear them with your strength. Just move them out."
Hey.
Yu smiled innocently. His tough man's heart was now completely soft. He worked tirelessly to move the little clothes for his daughter. From time to time, he would tear open a piece of clothing to have a look and try to imagine what his daughter would look like wearing it. Su, who was standing by, saw Yu packing a few pieces of clothes and was enjoying it. She shook her head and didn't urge him. After packing her clothes, she went to the bathroom and started collecting towels, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. These things were not supposed to be necessary in the end times, but since there was water and electricity and no worries about brushing teeth, she might as well make herself as clean and comfortable as possible.
Why not?
Soon, all 10 babies in the medical building were carried onto the medical carts, with 5 babies in each cart. When Su and her team came back from a hospital last time, they drove a total of 2 medical carts, each of which was equipped with 5 adults holding babies, including 2 doctors for nurses, Zhou Xiaolin, Qin Yu, and 2 gangsters. Dai Chun and the remaining 3 gangsters went to Li Xiaoyu's villa. The 4 of them worked together to lift Li Xiaoyu's big callus out, intending to load it onto a truck and transport it away. Li Xia's Lao Gan Ma was also arranged to sit on the passenger seat of the truck early. But when Li Xiaoyu's big cocoon was lifted out, it was illuminated by the moonlight and suddenly emitted a hazy and beautiful light. Her silk strands suddenly glowed and emitted bursts of fragrance, which made Dai Chun and the 3 gangsters who were lifting the cocoon feel confused. They loosened their hands, and the big cocoon fell down. At this time, Su was holding her waist and walked out from behind the wall of the villa. She saw Dai Chun and the three gangsters. They had strange expressions on their faces, and they were breathing rapidly, with ruddy complexions and panting. She hurriedly held her breath, took a step back, and shouted, "The fragrance of flowers has aphrodisiac effects. Don't smell it, and quickly carry the cocoon into the truck." This is a big problem. Li Xiaoyu has evolved for so long and has gone through such a long evolution process, but she has evolved a kind of aphrodisiac fragrance. No wonder she always feels that Li Xiaoyu's energy is a bit wood-related. Isn't the fragrance of flowers wood-related? But what use is this ability? Su was overwhelmed and threw out 4 streams of water, which made Dai Chun and the 3 gangsters feel cold. The 4 of them woke up instantly, and their faces were full of shame and embarrassment. They didn't dare to make any excuses to Su, and hurriedly lifted Li Xiaoyu's big cocoon and moved it into the truck. They also caught the 2 mutant roosters and hen that could eat insects, the pig that was raised in the Su family's yard and was helping to consume vegetables, and a mutant bush seedling, and threw them all into the truck and locked the door of the truck tightly. Dai Chun and 3 gangsters were put in a farce by Li Xiaoyu's scent of flowers. The 4 of them discussed and drove a car. The rest of them drove 1 car each. Su ignored the remaining 4 trucks of soldiers, but when they saw that Su was ready, they also found a few pickup trucks, city SUVs, and ambulances in the small square. The military trucks of these soldiers had been frozen by Su on the path in front of the city wall. Although Yiyu's fire was powerful and melted some of the ice, Su was frozen through so many layers after all, and half of the 4 trucks were still embedded in the ice and had not melted. So the 4 large trucks naturally could not be driven. Fortunately, Brother Pai usually liked to have some cars. These cars could not be taken away if they were left here, so they could be driven out. The remaining soldiers who could not find their cars quickly ran for a while, ran out of the ice and permafrost, and found a lot of good cars in the Apple Villa district. They squeezed in a few times and followed Su and Yiyu's convoy out of the Apple Villa district. Then there were a lot of large items left that couldn't be taken away, such as large medical equipment and so on. Because they left in a hurry, they were all left here. Fortunately, Lu Yin was about to die, so after Lu Yin was dead, they could go back to the safe zone to drag these things. Alas, what a pity for the mutated soil. Beside him, Su's mother had a depressed look on her face, as if she was in a bad mood because she didn't load the soil from the Su family's wall into the car. Although her face looked depressed, her eyes were clearly a little uncomfortable. Her hands, which she had not had time to wash, were covered with a layer of mud. Under Chu Xian's gaze, she was hiding her hands and became more and more uncomfortable. Chu Xian had just suspected that when Su's mother walked out of the wall of the Su family villa, she was carrying several boxes of luggage, but she put the rest of the boxes in the trunk of the car and only placed this big box at her feet. This made Chu Xian even more certain that what Su's mother was stepping on was none other than the mutated soil inside the Su family's wall. Chu Xian remained calm and did not expose Su's mother. He just sighed a few times and watched the convoy leave the Apple Villa district in the moonlight. He said again, "I told you that you guys made too much noise this time, and the commander isn't a very good-tempered person, so he may or may not let you out. You'd better listen to me and stay in the Apple Villa area and transfer in batches. Don't we still have you? It's better to go with us and live freely." This, hee. Chu Xian smiled awkwardly, feeling as if he had fallen into Su's trap. In the past, he was the only one who brainwashed others, but this time he was almost brainwashed by Su. In fact, what Su said seemed to be right. Although he, Chu Xian, wanted to follow Lu Yin to do great things, if he was really the kind of person who could be sacrificed at will, it seemed that there was no point in staying with Lu Yin. But there is a living ancestor here. Whether Chu Xian can be successful in the future depends on whether he can protect this living ancestor. Thinking of this, Chu Xian feels that even if Lu Yin does not spare his life, he must not leave this safe zone casually. By the way, once night fell in the safe zone, the streets became very quiet. Apart from the patrolling motor vehicles, there were one or two thinly dressed and revealing women standing under the dim yellow solar streetlights. Su, sitting in the speeding car, casually glanced at the women standing under the streetlights. These were the so-called streetwalkers in the apocalypse. Each of them had a drooping face and looked miserable, as if they were forced into prostitution. She straightened her head without feeling anything and watched the car speeding forward until it gradually entered the western defense line of the safe zone. In front of the defense line, there was indeed a large number of soldiers blocking the way, all of them fully armed, holding submachine guns and ready for battle. Su, please sit down. There is someone in front of you in the driver's seat. Yu opened his mouth and called Su. Just as he was about to tell Su to sit tight, he was about to rush out, but Su fastened her seatbelt and shouted, "It's already this late. Stop whining, rush over. Anyone who stands in my way will die." After saying that, Su waved her hand and threw it back. A circle of water rope was tied around Chu Xian's neck, gradually tightening. Her eyebrows were cold, and she had a domineering and tyrannical aura. She signaled Yu to open the window next to Chu Xian, turned around, looked at Chu Xian and sneered. "Commander Chu, I don't think I need to tell you what to do." This bad tone and the tough approach to Chu Xian were really unlike the Su who was chatting and laughing with him in the car just now. She turned hostile at will, and her aura was completely different. One was like an innocent daughter who could only rely on Yu, and the other was like a ferocious gangster who was rampant with a group of minions. Chu Xian had no choice but to stick his head out of the window and shout to the soldiers blocking the way outside, "I am your superior, Chu Xian. Get out of the way. Get out of the way quickly. I am Chu Xian. Get out of the way." The soldiers looked at each other. Yi's car stopped for a moment in front of the soldiers, and the convoy behind him also slowed down. Then, after a while, the soldiers under the searchlights made way for Yu and the vehicles behind him amid Chu Xian's shouting, letting them out. The eagle in the sky was still circling, following closely behind Su and Yu's convoy. Yu raised his head and looked toward the sky. With one hand holding the steering wheel of the car, he rolled up a fireball with the other hand and threw it into the sky. The fireball was heading towards the eagle in the sky. However, before the fireball could reach the eagle, it fell down in mid-air. Ha ha! Su, who was sitting in the passenger seat, couldn't help but smile. The eagle was flying high in the sky, following above their heads, trying to track their whereabouts. Yi was only a third-level fire-type mutant now, so naturally he couldn't catch an eagle that high. Yi glanced at Su who was laughing, his face froze with anger. He changed his hand to hold the steering wheel, and with the fingers of his other hand, he pressed a few times the Special Forces watch on his wrist. Beep, 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 beep. "What do you want to do?" As soon as Chu Xian finished speaking, Yu turned around and glared at him, without saying anything. Su, who was sitting in the passenger seat, looked at Yu's watch, then looked at her own watch, and found that there were a few green dots on the dial, flickering without any sense of rhythm. She had noticed these green dots on weekdays, and they didn't look special, so Su just thought they were decorations. After Yu pressed a few times and heard Chu Xian's explanation, Su suddenly felt that the watch she had been wearing on her wrist seemed very awesome, and it could even send Morse code. Just as he was thinking about it, a long-range bullet suddenly flew out from the sky and shot directly at the eagle that was following them high in the sky. It shook off a few feathers and ran away. Su tilted her head and looked up at the direction the eagle was flying in the sky. This eagle had such a high defense, so it must be at least a second-level mutant bird, so Luyin must be at least a third-level psychic? Generally, the psychic who controls mutant beasts must be of a higher level than the mutant beasts, otherwise they will easily be backfired. The most prominent feature is that when a mutant beast is injured, the damage it suffers will be transferred to varying degrees to the psychic who controls the mutant beast. If the psychic's level is higher than the mutant beast it controls, the damage it suffers will be less. If the levels are similar or slightly lower, the psychic who controls the mutant beast will probably suffer more serious injuries than the mutant beast. At this time, In the safe zone, Luin, who was writing calligraphy behind a desk, suddenly got so angry that he slapped the brush in his hand. A line of blood and tears flowed from behind the eye patch covering one eye. Black drops of ink splashed out from the crooked tip of the pen and fell on the white paper. He shouted angrily, "Someone notify the Superpower Vanguard team to bring Su back to me. Life or death. Just want to say life or death." Luin felt something was wrong. His current Superpower Vanguard team, including Xia Yaoshe, only had 300 people. If these 300 people were to forcibly stop Yu and Su, who knows how many would be killed or injured. Now superpowers are becoming more and more difficult to recruit. The death of a superpower means one less piece of territory. Luin thought of Su, who was let go by Chu Xian. It was a good move. He only had to sit outside the Apple Villa district and wait for Su to be almost consumed by the maggots. Then he could rescue her and surround the Su family on the pretext of protecting Su. However, the appearance of Yu ruined his plan. There was a sound of the door opening. Luin raised his hand to wipe the blood off his face. He was about to scold the soldier who came in, but he saw the soldier yelling in panic. "Commander, something happened. There are so many maggots on the street. Maggots are everywhere. You have to think of a solution quickly." Luin was stunned for a moment, and Lung Ling's face was filled with shock. He hurriedly wanted to drive his eagle to check out the situation, but the eyeball covered with the eye patch began to feel a burning pain as the supernatural power in his body was activated.
Ah!
Luin couldn't bear it anymore. He yelled angrily and fell on the table with sweat all over his forehead. He felt it was difficult to mobilize his eagle at the moment. Before he could get over the pain, the sound of flapping wings was heard outside the slightly open window. His eagle returned to the nest. "Move quickly." He glanced casually at the eagle flapping its wings outside the window and coming in through the gap. Luin bent down, caught his eagle in his hand, and said to the soldier standing opposite him who was waiting for his order, "Notify everyone to go to the high buildings for temporary shelter." The Superpower Vanguard team returns to the safe zone. Everyone prepares to kill the maggots. As expected, he was a man who was going to do great things. He knew that the reason his eagle was shot was that Yuyu's men must have targeted his eagle and did not want his eagle to follow them and find out where they were going. But why did Yuyu's men target his eagle? Was it because Yuyu wanted to run away and notified his teammates to shoot, or did Yuyu already have people targeting his eagle? Without rushing to analyze all of this, Luin was angry at the moment. Weren't the maggots that were originally in the Apple Villa area wiped out by Yuyu's fire a long time ago? Why are there more of them now than before? They are crawling all over the streets of the entire safety zone? No matter how surprised and puzzled he was, he reacted quickly. The most urgent task was not to find out where Su and Yuyu were, but to solve his own urgent problem first. Soon, Xia Yaoshe received Lu Yin's order. Su Xiaofeng was still looking at the high-powered telescope. He turned around and said to Xia Yaoshe, who was sitting on the sofa, "Su and the others were taken away by Yuyu and went west."
Xia
Yaoshe was holding a map in his hand, which was spread out on the coffee table, studying the geographical environment of the entire safe zone. After hearing Su Xiaofeng's words, he nodded. So Su Xiaofeng asked again, "Now the streets in the safe zone are full of maggots, and everyone has evacuated upstairs. Luin has already ordered us to return to the safe zone quickly. Should we go back?"
Go back.
Xia Yaoshe took a red marker and drew a circle on a certain point on the map. His handsome face had a resolute look, and his slender fingers tapped the red circle. "It is said that there are several hostages here. We should take advantage of the fact that Luyin's eagle has returned to its nest after being injured. We should split into two groups. One group will kill the maggots, and the other group will get the hostages out. What do we do after we get them out?" Zhang Anquan was already preparing to leave. While packing, he turned around and looked at Xia Yaoshe and asked, "Should we let these hostages meet the families of the Superpower Vanguard team? Let's talk about it later." Xia Yaoshe shook his hand to refuse. "Send these hostages to Su and give them some crystal cores to feed them." The hostages in Chu Xian's hands were not gathered together, but a few were placed here and there. The entire safe zone was full of places where he hid hostages. These hostages lived well. He did not abuse them, but provided them with food, clothing, and crystal cores, so that these hostages really lived a worry-free life. Therefore, Xia Yaoshi also took this into consideration. He was afraid that many hostages were simply unwilling to leave the life of eating and waiting to die given by Chu Xian, and thus pass this emotion to the superpowers of the Superpower Pioneer team. Therefore, when bringing these hostages out, Xia Yaoshi decided not to let them meet the people of the Superpower Pioneer team first, so as to prevent the hostages from spreading their unwillingness to leave to the superpowers of the Superpower Pioneer team. Everyone nodded, took the map drawn by Xia Yaoshi, took a look at it, packed up, and went out armed, ready to return to the safe zone to kill the maggots and rescue the hostages. However, as soon as they walked out of the high-rise building, they were frightened by the vast ocean of maggots in front of them. Looking at the maggots on the road through a high-power telescope, they did not feel as strongly as they did at close range. Now they saw white maggots rolling everywhere. There was a person on the maggot tide opposite the high-rise building. He was screaming in the last second, and in the next second, he turned into a human figure made of maggots and melted in the ocean of maggots. Su Xiaofeng couldn't help but turned around and vomited. Xia Yaoshi, who was at the front, frowned, and purple electric sparks flashed from his hands, weaving a large net that covered his feet. Instantly, the smell of burnt protein, accompanied by the sizzling sound of electricity, filled everyone's eardrums and nasal cavity. This man was unreliable and had a treacherous mind. Su would definitely not take Chu Xian back to Bafang village. When she left the safe zone, she only thought that in the apocalypse, the mutated animals would not be so easy to deal with. Their terrifying reproductive ability was the most terrifying thing about the mutated animals. However, she did not expect that shortly after they left, the entire safe zone was almost engulfed in a sea of maggots. In fact, survival in the apocalypse is like this. There is no permanent place of peace. The bases that people have spent countless thoughts and years to build will be besieged by tides of zombies from time to time. A base will be destroyed if you are not careful, let alone a small safe zone. After surviving for a long time in the apocalypse, you will find that constant moving and running around are too common, and there is nothing to be surprised about. After an hour or so, Luyin's safe zone was getting farther and farther away, and Su and Yiyu had already arrived at Bafang village in an orderly manner with a convoy. After a brief rest, everyone went back to their work. First of all, there were the 4 trucks of soldiers brought out from the safe zone, and the 4 remnant soldiers who had just been casually taken back by Zhuoshijia. Su threw all of these people to Su's father. That night, each of them was given a big bowl of rice, with a big mouthful of meat and a big mouthful of vegetables, and then they began their hard labor career, repairing the wall. Although they now have 3 or 4 Earth-type mutants, it is still a big project to enclose the entire Bafang village. Survival in the wild is not like in the safe zone. A large number of mutant animals will emerge at any time. The defense of the wall is indispensable, and the cement and construction glue required are also indispensable, and the corresponding coolies are also a lot. However, given the current living conditions, Father Su suggested that everyone temporarily move to Bafang Villa to hide for a few days. Although there is blood, dirt, and stench everywhere, it is surrounded by a wall and is on a commanding height. There is also a small hotel inside that is comparable to a 5-star hotel, so it is no problem to accommodate the elderly, the weak, women, and children. The rest are young and middle-aged people like Yiyu. Since the hotel is full, it is okay for them to stay outside for a few nights. It will not be too late to make arrangements after the wall is built. The zombies in the small hotel at Bafang Villa were cleared out by Su and Yiyu last time. This time they're going to move in, so they need to clean the environment. No one has lived there for several months, and it has been ravaged by zombies. Not only is there blood everywhere in the small hotel, but the entire Bafang Villa is also covered with blood. Father Su first instructed the soldiers in the 4 trucks to find some digging tools such as hoes in the farmers' homes and started digging trenches at the entrance of the village. Then he took 2 special forces soldiers with him and drove to survey the terrain of the entire Bafong village, looking for building materials. Except for some guards, all of Yi Yu's men hid in the car to sleep. They had to be on duty at night, so they had to rest well during the day to maintain their strength. Brother Pai took the initiative to clean up Bafong Villa without anyone's instructions, and the babies were concentrated on the medical car. It was better not to take these babies with weak resistance out of the medical car before a clean environment was cleared. The hotel is located opposite a fishing pond in Bafong Villa. It is about 3 stories high. The first floor is the lobby. Behind the lobby is an antique corridor. Through the corridor is a large kitchen. The second and third floors are guest rooms. There are not many guest rooms, only about 10 on each floor. Because it is a parent-child manor, each room is decorated in a high-end manner and is very large. There is also a children's play area in the room. Brother Pai and others thought it was very good. While cleaning the hotel, they also sorted out the toys, floor mats, and the like. They planned to wash them and put them in the sun for a few days when the sun rose the next day. In the patio surrounded by the hall and the kitchen, there is a quaintly shaped well. Because they were afraid that the children brought by the tourists would crawl into the well was very shallow. Although there was flowing water, it was not very deep, only about half a meter, so it could only be used for viewing. Farmers in Bafong village also have wells, but most of the wellheads are sealed. When farmers need water, they use submersible pumps to pump water from the ground to the water tanks on the roof, and then connect the water pipes of the entire building. But now, no matter whether it is Bafong Villa or Bafong Village, all the groundwater cannot be used. The water sources of the entire world have been polluted. There is no reason why such a small village would be an exception. Su was originally guarding in front of the hotel, watching Brother Pai and others search out more than a dozen buckets, and then she filled the buckets with water. After washing the buckets, she filled more buckets with water. Later, she remembered that she could actually go find a water tower at the highest point and directly fill the water into the water tower. Thinking of this, she looked around and went to look for the water tower. In the entire Bafong Villa, the tallest building was this 3-story hotel, so the water tower was easy to find. However, the submersible pump connected to the water tower was always turning. The water in the water tower was pumped up from the ground before and after the end of the world. She had to pump out all the water in the water tower before she could put clean water in. The view on the top floor of the hotel is also very good. There is a glass greenhouse with a water tower at the very edge of the greenhouse, decorated like a tree. There is a warning sign next to the tree prohibiting children from approaching. After Su opened the window of the glass greenhouse and pumped out all the water in the water tower, she turned into a water dragon and flew out of the glass window and directly fell into the fishing pond in front of the hotel. She then destroyed the pipe connected to the submersible pump and injected clean water into the water tower. After doing all this, it was already noon. Brother Pai and others had already set up a big pot in front of the hotel and started cooking. The big kitchen of the hotel had not been tidied up yet, and the conditions were limited, so everyone could only make do with solving the problem of lunch outdoors. In fact, eating a big pot meal in the open air is quite lively. There are doctors, nurses, gangsters holding babies, soldiers in 4 large trucks, Yu and his group of special forces soldiers with special powers, and 5 idle special powers people shuttling among them, Su's father and mother, Qin Yu, Zhou Xiaolin, Dai Chun, and Ruerue. It is as bustling as Chinese New Year, and such a harsh environment is created with a Chinese New Year atmosphere. Due to limited conditions, there were no small dishes that were finely chopped and fried. After all, there were so many people waiting to work after dinner. So Brother Pai and others set up 5 large stoves with 5 large pots on them. 2 of the pots were used to steam rice, and the other 3 were filled with water. After the water boils, large pieces of meat are cooked in one pot, vegetables are thrown in another pot, and some hot water is symbolically boiled in another pot. When eating, there are no tables, chairs, or benches around the table, as it would be too troublesome to move them around. Everyone eats while standing, and after eating, everyone needs to scoop a bowl of hot water from the pot to wash their own dishes. Su, come here, let mom wash you. In the crowd, Sue's mother took the bowl and chopsticks from Su's hand and walked to the hot pot with her. Su held her waist and watched her mother wash the dishes for her carefully and seriously. She felt so happy that she smiled and said, "Mom, everyone washes it themselves. If I encounter this kind of situation again in the future, I will just wash it myself." "Oh, your stomach, please calm down a little. My waist can hardly bend down." Sue's mother slapped Su's hand that was about to help her with the chopsticks and took the two bowls, her own and Su's, and washed them once and again. Sue's father happened to come over with his bowl and wanted to give it to Sue's mother and help wash it as well. However, after washing the bowl, Sue's mother ignored his father and took Su to the parking lot behind the villa, leaving Sue's father alone, standing there with a dirty bowl, feeling very embarrassed. As the two walked along, Sue's mother spoke in a mysterious voice, as if afraid that someone would hear her. She asked Su, "Where do you think we should put those truckloads of mutant soil?" Before the maggot infestation in the safe zone, Sue's mother asked Brother Pai to transport several truckloads of mutated soil to Bafong Village. Now that everyone has been resettled in Bafong Villa, Sue's mother must find a place to store her mutated soil so that they can live without worries about food and vegetables. But Sue's mother thought that since she could get out of the safe zone once, she might get out of Bafong Village a second time, or a third or fourth time. Who can predict what will happen in this apocalypse? The next time she gets out, she might not be as lucky as this time, so she would ask Brother Pai to transport the mutated soil out first.
This is easy, Mom.
I'll give you an idea. Su walked forward, past a bronze round arch, and arrived at the parking lot behind Bafong Villa. She continued to talk to Sue's mother beside her. "Ask them to find you a big truck, bigger than the one that carried Li Xiuyu. Put all the mutant soil in that truck, and put some lights inside the truck. It will be a mobile greenhouse." In fact, according to Su's idea, Sue's mother could grow rice and vegetables in Bafong Villa. Isn't there a vegetable garden opposite the cooking camp behind the hotel? Sue's mother can fully play in the vegetable garden. But since Sue's mother was only thinking about how to use the mutated soil to grow vegetables, she followed Sue's mother's line of thought and put the mutated soil into the truck and planted vegetables and rice in the truck. There was nothing wrong with this. If she wanted to run away at that time, she could just drive the truck. Sue's mother thought this was a good idea. When she took Su to the parking lot, she called a few young men along the way and asked them to help the whole truck. Then she watched Su return to the RV and then got busy. She turned around to see her mutated soil. Speaking of these young men, they were all Brother Pai's subordinates. Two of them were responsible for delivering meals to the soldiers who were digging trenches at the entrance of Bafong Village. Because they had accepted the commission from Sue's mother, they selected 5 more soldiers to help find a truck while delivering the meals. A total of about 10 people were wandering around Bafong Village. After searching the nth yard, the gangsters became a little more familiar with the 5 soldiers. Originally, there were about 10 people acting together, but later they felt that the efficiency was too slow, so they split into groups of 2 and continued searching. In one of the cars, a soldier was partnered with a gangster. After a pleasant conversation, the soldier asked curiously, "Brother Bao, what are we looking for?" The gangster called Brother Bao has a very funny middle-parted doll-like hair. The ends of his hair are yellow, and the newly grown roots are black. The reason why his hair grows like this is because the end of the world has come, and he doesn't have the leisure to dye the newly grown roots yellow. After a long time, his hair becomes clearly black and yellow, which looks quite unique. Brother Bao is sitting in the driver's seat, holding a cigarette in his mouth, turning the steering wheel. Hearing this, he glanced at the soldier in the passenger seat and said in a high tone, "What are you looking for?" "A truck." The soldier smiled, his eyes rolled, and he handed Brother Bao a cigarette and asked, "There are so many cars in our village. Why do we have to find a truck? Why are you looking for a truck?" Brother Bao waved his hand to block the cigarette handed over by the soldier, turned his head and smiled at the soldier very warmly. Then suddenly his face turned serious and said viciously, "Why ask so many questions? Just be alert and look for it." Okay. The soldier was not annoyed by Brother Bao's bad attitude. He turned his head and looked out of the window. He seemed to be looking carefully to see if there were any trucks on the roadside, but no one knew what he was thinking. At this time, outside Bafong Villa, Su practiced yoga in the RV for a while, and then lay on the bed, ready to take a nap. Su thought that in that Coke truck there were Li Xiuyu's big cocoon, 2 chickens, and a pig. Her memory was getting worse and worse recently, and she actually forgot such a big thing. So Su hurriedly got up and walked out of her RV accompanied by the shrill cry of a rooster. She then walked around several cars full of supplies and came to the back of Li Xiuyu's truck. She reached out her hand and used an ice knife to break the big lock hanging on it. Walls of the truck had been pecked with holes by the 2 ordinary mutant chickens, and a strange fragrance wafted out of those holes. Su accidentally smelled a hint of it on the way here. She was horrified, thinking that she would be aphrodisiac, but she found that she was not disturbed at all by the fragrance. So Li Xiaoyu's love scent is ineffective for pregnant women? Or is it ineffective for women? She didn't know. As for scientific research matters, it would be better to ask Dr. Hong to do the research. Now she just had to release the 2 chickens and the pig. As soon as the big lock on the car door was opened, a big hen rushed out as if running for her life. Su turned her head and saw that the hair on the hen's buttocks was almost all gone. The bare buttocks were red and swollen, and the 2 holes on the buttocks seemed to be oozing blood. Su looked more carefully and suddenly felt a strong wind coming from behind. She quickly protected her stomach and moved away. Then she saw the rooster also came out of the truck, flapping its wings and chasing after the hen. What kind of bizarre and horrific incident happened in the truck? Su's face was full of curiosity. She carefully poked her head out from the door and looked into the dark carriage. In addition to the big cocoon lying quietly in the innermost part, there was also a sow that was finally quieted down, and a mutant bush. This was normal. 1 person, 1 pig, and 1 plant. The 3 parties lived in peace. What was abnormal was the chicken feathers and bloodstains on the ground, the hen whose ace was almost completely bald, and the rooster that chased out. It seemed that Li Xiaoyu's love fragrance was not only ineffective on pregnant women, sows, and plants, but also had a great effect on roosters and men. Su couldn't help but shudder. The big cocoon of Li Xiaoyu that exuded aphrodisiac fragrance was really intriguing. She thought about it, condensed 2 water people, holding a popsicle in her hand, entered the carriage and drove the big sow out. They moved the mutant bush with soil on it and carefully planted it under the wall opposite the parking lot, hoping that this mutant bush would grow along the wall of Bafong Villa like it did in the Apple Villa area. Finally, Su opened the door of the truck's driver's seat, drove the truck with her 6-month-old belly, and locked Li Xiaoyu's big baby in the truck. The truck went through the fire escape and was sent to the inside of Bafong Villa, where it was placed at the very edge, which was the farthest from the hotel. Putting it so far away is to prevent everyone from being accidentally scented by Li Xiaoyu's love scent one day and turning the hotel into a scene of fighting, which would be extremely embarrassing. After settling Li Xiaoyu's truck, Su walked back to the vicinity of the hotel and found a fortune teller with gold-type abilities. She wanted the fortune teller to build a thick metal wall around Li Xiaoyu's truck to prevent Li Xiaoyu from being too far away from them and not being able to take care of him when he encountered danger. Of course, considering the fortune teller's gender, Su still gave the fortune teller a shot in advance, asking the fortune teller to hold his breath. Otherwise, when he was hit by Li Xiaoyu's love scent, he couldn't find the target in such a far place and could only comfort himself that would be a bit sad. There were some trivial matters around, and they were busy all afternoon. In the evening, after everyone had dinner, they finally had time to rest. The 4 brothers sent by Yiyu to watch the eagle sent back the news that they had mastered several places where Lu Yin stayed, and they also drew a portrait of Lu Yin for Yiyu. However, it is not suitable to go back to the safe zone to plan the assassination at the moment, because the safe zone is full of maggots of different sizes, making the entire safe zone seem to be trapped in a sea of maggots. If these special forces enter the safe zone at this time, they will help Lu Yin to eliminate the maggots. Logically speaking, In the face of the coming of such a great human disaster, Su didn't think it was a big deal to put aside some of the little prejudices, thoughts, and plots of human beings and help Lu Yin deal with the maggot tide. After all, from a certain perspective, dealing with maggots is everyone's responsibility. But since Lu Yin first wanted to plot against Su and used maggots to consume Su, it would seem too pretentious for Su to show her great benevolence and righteousness and think about the welfare of mankind and saving society. She was not a saint who would use her own resources to save her enemy's life, even though there were still many innocent survivors in the safe zone. But since the safe zone belongs to Lu Yin, everyone who enters and leaves the safe zone must pay supplies to Lu Yin, then these innocent survivors are Lu Yin's responsibility. No matter who is on the list, it is not Su's turn to worry about it. When those survivors pay her supplies for shelter, she will eliminate the maggots without hesitation. As for now, she should live her own life and build a good defense on her own territory. That is what she should do most urgently. The night became darker and darker. Su sat in the RV, leaning on the bed, touching her 6-month-old belly and looking at the portrait of Lu Yin that Yu gave her in the afternoon. She no longer remembers what Lu Yin looks like. In her previous life at the Xiangqing base, she only saw Lu Yin from afar on the day the base was built. She only knew that he was a mutant who was missing an eye and could drive mutant beasts. At that time, she didn't know that one day she would have to assassinate Lu Yin, so she didn't look at Lu Yin's appearance carefully. Even though she saw him, she didn't remember him deeply in her heart. Looking at this portrait of Lu Yin again, Su was a little skeptical for a moment. With just 2 simple strokes, could Yu successfully assassinate Lu Yin? In May in Xiangqing, even in the countryside, there was a hint of hot air. Su sighed, put Lu Yin's portrait on the bedside table, got up and left the bedroom, went into the small bathroom, and planned to take a shower. Living in an RV is much better than living in a car outside. Because the hotel has not been cleaned for a long time, all the daily necessities inside, including bedding stored in the warehouse, were turned out and cleaned by Brother Pai and others. When everyone came out, they were in such a hurry that they didn't take any large bedding items that took up space. Now they are probably left in the maggot tide, waiting to be eaten by them. In order to prevent the appearance of maggots in Bafong Villa, Dr. Hong gave a formula for disinfectant. Brother Pai and Zhuoshijia are now leading people to spray every corner. It is estimated that the hotel will be uninhabitable for 3 to 5 days, so everyone can only sleep in the car. The hotel is full of the smell of disinfectant and is really not suitable for pregnant women, infants, and the elderly. What's more, everyone has moved to a new place, and except Su, no one may be able to sleep at night. For example, Su's father and mother have been busy outside and have no time to go back to the RV to rest. The bathroom in the RV was too small, and it was just enough for Su, with her big belly, to turn around inside. Recently, she didn't like to stay in such a narrow place for too long. She always felt that her breathing was not smooth, and she couldn't stand or sit smoothly. Even if she managed to fall asleep while lying down, she would always wake up because of the suffocation. So after a quick wash, Su came out. She was wearing a colorful striped maternity nightgown and walked into the bedroom, rubbing her wet long hair. She saw Yu lying on the bed at a glance. Su pointed to the portrait of Lu Yin on the bedside table next to her and asked, "Is there any news from the safe zone recently? I heard that the maggot tide has caused the deaths of quite a few people." Yu stood up, took Lu Yin's portrait, nailed it to the wall, then sat back down beside Su's bed. He took out a toy dart from somewhere, threw it at Lu Yin's portrait, and the dart pierced into Lu Yin's forehead. This tide of mutated maggots made everyone in the entire safe zone fully realize the horror of mutated animals in the apocalypse. The speed of their reproduction was simply indescribably terrifying, far more terrifying than zombies. It would often happen that when the superpower vanguard team had just cleared a street and turned around to leave, the mutated maggots on that street would begin to reproduce again. So one must not be careless at all. Blocked by the maggots these 2 days, Lu Yin had no time to cause trouble to Su and others, let alone go out to expand the territory of the safe zone. But once the maggot tide is suppressed, Lu Yin will have to regroup soon. Of course, if Lu Yin is not stupid, it is best for him not to think about Su Su's little love anymore. After all, didn't Lu Yin still have so many things to do? Building a base, expanding territory, which one was not more important than finding Su Su, who was out of reach? Su Su leaned on the pillow, watching Yu get up, take back the dart from the center of Lu Yin's portrait, and then raised his hand and shot the dart into Lu Yin's intact eyeball. She looked thoughtful, thought for a while, then kicked Yu and asked, "What were you busy with just now?" "I heard chickens crowing outside." "Those 2 mutant chickens?" Yu stood up, took back the dart from the portrait, stood beside Su Su, closed his eyes, and felt the distance with the dart in his hand. Before shooting the dart again, he said casually, "I don't know where they built a nest and gave birth to a large nest of mutant chicks. The chicks were this big when they were born." Yu shot the dart, opened his eyes, and looked with satisfaction. His dart hit Lu Yin's forehead again. He turned back and compared the size of his fist to Su Su, indicating that the chickens were as big as his fist, and emphasized again, "There were too many chicks, more than a dozen of them chirping and running around. King Kong and I caught a few and planned to stew them for food." "Wow, that's great. There's chicken soup to drink." Su Su felt hungry for some reason when she heard that. Without waiting for Yu to refuse, she asked curiously, "Those 2 mutant chickens have been kept in Apple Villa District for so long, but they haven't given birth to any chicks. How come they gave birth to so many chicks all at once after moving to Bafong Village?"
10 at a time.
The reproductive capacity of mutated animals is quite extreme. Either they cannot give birth to any chicks, or they give birth to a large flock in their lifetime. The fact that they did not give birth to chicks before can be explained as being unable to do so, or the 2 chickens did not want to give birth. Oh. Su Su remembered that the 2 ordinary mutant chickens were locked in Li Xiuyu's truck, and they were obsessed with the fragrance of flowers for a long time. The reproduction rate of creatures in the apocalypse cannot be viewed from the perspective of the pre-apocalypse. The size of ordinary mutated chickens is 1/3 larger than that of non-mutated chickens before the apocalypse. Laying 10 eggs at a time is still considered a small number. Hatching chicks? No. You can tell by looking at the speed at which the maggots replicate and reproduce that the eggs laid by this mutant hen will hatch as soon as the chicks hit the ground. If we still look at it from the perspective before the end of the world, thinking that there will always be a long incubation process, then it is not called a mutant chick. Hearing this, Yu smiled wickedly. He sat down next to Su Su, raised his hand, and embraced Su Su, who was sitting on the bed. He whispered mysteriously in her ear, "I saw the rooster riding on the hen this evening. The hen is next to Li Xiaoyu's truck." "Ha ha ha. Why did you sneak over to Li Xiaoyu's place for no reason?" Su Su dodged the hot breath that Yu was spraying on her ears and looked at Yu with suspicion. Yu immediately raised his hands and said innocently, "God knows, I just heard those 2 chickens were too noisy, so I ran over to take a look. How could I know that the rooster was being naughty?" "Bah, you're a hooligan." Su Su pushed Yu away, rolled her eyes, lay on the bed sideways, and pulled the thin quilt to cover herself. "I won't talk to you anymore. Go to sleep. I have to go to the bathroom early tomorrow morning." "I'm sleeping at your place today." Yu stood up and planned to take a shower in the bathroom. Su Su raised her head and frowned as she heard this. "What does it look like for you to sleep here with me? How are you going to explain to my parents when they come back tonight?" He thought he was still in Apple Villa. Su Su and her parents slept in 2 separate bedrooms. You could climb over the wall and sneak into her bedroom every night? "It's okay. Just say I'm protecting you." Originally, Yu squeezed into the RV to sleep with Su Su, which meant to protect Su Su. If he didn't do that, why would he get close to her bed every night? Su Su was so pregnant, even if he wanted to do something, he didn't dare. Moreover, it was late at night and in a new environment, so it was understandable that Yu was a little careful. Su Su, lying on the bed, closed her eyes and followed Yu. Before she had time to think about what would happen if her parents caught Yu sleeping in the same bed with her, she watched Yu go to take a shower. She closed her eyes and fell asleep on her left side. When Yu came out of the bathroom in his shorts, steam rising from his body, he saw Su lying on the edge of the bed with her wet hair casually spread on the pillow. The moisture had not yet dried up and had soaked the pillow and sheets a little. He looked at Su's extremely tired appearance with some heartache, walked forward quietly, lay behind Su, grabbed Su's long hair and dried it with high temperature. After a while, the wet black hair was dried by his big hands, and the moisture on the pillowcases and sheets was also dried. The next day, Su got up. It was already noon. She frowned and rubbed her sore waist.
She looked around.
She didn't know when she fell asleep. Yu had left long ago. She didn't know if her parents came back last night. She yawned, washed up, and got out of the RV. What she saw was a century-long battle between humans and chickens. The cause of the incident was this. Yesterday, it was only one afternoon. There were at least 10 eggs in a nest. They were all ordinary mutant chicks. At that time, Yu and others did not pay much attention. They just caught a few chicks and killed them. They put them in the freezer and planned to eat them the next day, which was today. The remaining chicks seemed docile and had no intention of attacking humans, so they left them alone. So, in the end, no one knew how many chicks were left, about 8? Or 7. Anyway, the remaining mutant chicks were completely free-range overnight. They kept eating earthworms in the ground, vegetables in the fields, and all kinds of things that could be digested by them. In just one night, they grew to the size of 2 fists. This is nothing. If you go to the countryside to make a living, which family doesn't raise a few chickens? There are only 7 or 8 chickens. Su's family has a lot of food, vegetables, and frozen meat. They can't afford to raise these mutant chickens. But the key problem is that the bad thing is the rooster. It's pitiful the original ordinary mutant hen has lived in the Apple Villa district for so long, but there is no sign of laying an egg. It has been kept with Li Xiaoyu for only 1 or 2 days. I don't know what it ate or smelled, or whether its egg-laying function has been activated. The ordinary mutant hen had exo-life again and began to lay eggs one after another. When people woke up the next day, there was another brood of about 10 fist-sized mutant chicks, following their brothers and sisters, looking for food everywhere in the hotel kitchen. 7 or 8 mutant chickens the size of 2 fists, led by about 10 mutant chickens the size of 1 fist, rushed into the hotel kitchen like bandits, eating and pecking all over. A large bag of rice placed in the corner was eaten up by nearly 20 mutant chickens in a short while. It was only a matter of time before several bags of rice were eaten up. That's not all. 2 mutant chickens the size of fists flew onto the kitchen counter, knocking over things or smashing them. The kitchen, which had been tidied up with great effort, looked like it had been ransacked. There were holes everywhere made by the chickens' beaks, and stinky chicken shoot was flying everywhere from time to time. When Brother Pai and his gangsters got up early and entered the kitchen, they were rolling up their sleeves to prepare food for everyone when they saw this scene of a chicken disaster. Should this make people angry? So Brother Pai and his gang swung their sticks and drove these ordinary mutant chickens out of the hotel. When Su got out of the RV, she saw Brother Pai and the gang chasing the mutant chickens that were flying, jumping, and running around. Although ordinary mutant chickens retain the docility of poultry, rabbits will climb walls when they are forced into a corner, and chickens will fight back when they are in danger of being killed. So a battle between humans and chickens was staged in this Bafong villa. Su stood there, staring blankly at a chicken flying in front of her, and the gangster chasing after the chicken with a butcher knife in his hand. She couldn't help but laugh for a while holding her pregnant belly, and then, as if she had finally regained her IQ, she realized that the situation was probably not going well. Maybe because of the influence of pregnancy, Su has been forgetful recently. She just listened to Yiyu's casual words last night and did not think about the harm of the mutant roosters and hens. She just thought that there was a group of little mutant chickens that could eat maggots in Bafong Villa. Not only that, Su was secretly happy, just waiting for the maggot tide in the safe zone to become uncontrollable. If one day they came to Bafong Village, she would have a large group of mutant chickens in her hands, which would be a great help in dealing with the maggot tide. However, the reproduction speed of mutant animals is terrifying. Not to mention the underage chickens that escaped to the outside of Bafong Villa. There are also 2 adult ones hidden in the villa. They are the originators of ordinary mutant chickens who became addicted to XXO because of Li Xiaoyu's love scent. The eggs did not need to be incubated, and chicks would pop out by themselves. The mutant animals grew very fast. Chickens lay eggs and eggs lay chickens, and the chickens would lay chicks endlessly. If things continue to develop, they will get out of control. By then, the reproduction rate will not be like this. Instead, it will increase exponentially. If ordinary mutant chickens were everywhere, densely occupying the land of Bafong Village, the level of danger would be no different from that of mutant maggots.
Yeyu, Yeyu.
Su thought of this big problem, so she turned around hurriedly, walked around the area where the chickens were flying and the people were jumping, and walked into the hotel. She planned to find out where Yiyu was and let Yiyu lead people to kill the 2 ordinary mutant chicken ancestors, but she was forced out by the stinky smell of chicken shoot. At this moment, Brother Pai knocked out a mutant chicken the size of 2 fists with a stick and walked to Su, holding the chicken's wings. Brother Pai looked worried and asked Su, what are we going to eat this morning? The rice in the kitchen is full of chicken shoot, and there is not a single good vegetable except for a few rotten leaves. There is some frozen meat in the freezer, but in addition to us, there are 4 truckloads of soldiers. It was early in the morning, and there was not enough time to pick vegetables from the vegetable garden to supply the laborers digging the trenches. Su's mother's truck had not been found yet, and she had nowhere to put her mutated soil, so the grain production could not keep up. The few bags of rice stored in the corner were pecked everywhere by the nearly 20 mutant chickens. That would be fine, but the rice grains were mixed with chicken shoot. If you want to know how much chicken shoot there is in the kitchen, look at the toilet. Although it is not as thick as the shoot in the toilet, it is also everywhere. Yiyu desperately brought back the frozen meat to replenish Su's body. It was a bit of a pity to give it to the 4 trucks of soldiers as food. Not only was it a pity, but it also failed Yiyu's love for Su. Besides, there was not much frozen meat. So many people would eat it as a dish, and it would be gone in 2 days. Su stood outside the hotel, frowning, and walked down the stairs a few steps, a little further away from the smelly hotel. She glanced at the fainted ordinary mutant chicken in Brother Pai's hand and said to Brother Pai, "Let's eat chicken today. Find Yiyu and ask him to bring a few psychics to search in Bafong Villa and Bafong Village. There will definitely be more chickens. They are not yet adults, so they are easy to kill. Haven't you seen ordinary gangsters kill a mutant chicken with sticks? The beaks of these mutant chickens are not as hard as those of adults. They don't run fast or fly high. They are just like ordinary poultry before the end of the world. Anyone can kill them." After walking 2 steps, Su turned back and said to Brother Pai, "Drink chicken soup in the morning, eat chicken at noon, and eat chicken offal, chicken feet, and chicken wings in the evening. If you think it's too monotonous, stir-fry some vegetables to go with it."
This.
Brother Pai looked down hesitantly at the mutant chicken in his hand, then raised his head and asked Su, "Can we eat the mutant chicken? It's edible. Eat it with confidence. I guarantee with my life that it won't be poisonous to kill anyone." Su nodded seriously, looking at Brother Pai with a look that said, "I am trustworthy." Just as he was about to leave, Brother Pai asked again, "What about Su? What about the rice in the chicken shoot? Just shovel it out and throw it into the fields as fertilizer. There is so much chicken shoot that even a few tons of water can't wash the smell of chicken shoot off the rice. It's a bargain for those mutant chickens, but it doesn't matter. They eat the rice and we eat the chickens. It's fair." Su was exaggerating, of course. Using tons of water would make the rice as clean as possible, but when she thought about the rice that she was about to eat, which had been mixed in the chicken shoot and picked out one by one from the shoot, wouldn't the person who ate it have any psychological trauma? After instructing Brother Pai, Su ignored the battles of people chasing chickens, chickens escaping, and chickens pecking people, and went straight to Li Xiyu's truck to find the 2 ordinary mutant chicken ancestors. At this moment, she didn't know where Yiyu and his brothers had gone. She planned to personally take the knife and castrate the rooster first. Su just walked back and forth around the truck 5 or 6 times, and the 2 ordinary mutant chickens seemed to know she was coming and ran away. She couldn't find them no matter how hard she looked. But she did meet a few ordinary mutant chicks that had just hatched from their eggshells. She grabbed a chick and looked at its belly and ace. She didn't know how to castrate it since it was so small. She also wanted to let the chick grow some meat so that she could kill it and eat it in the evening. But she was afraid that she would make a mistake with the knife and kill this fist-sized mutant chick, so she had no choice but to let the chick go. Later, she encountered a few slightly larger chickens. Su caught them one by one to observe their buttocks. As long as they were male, she castrated them without mercy. After doing this for a few times, Su felt that she had become an expert in castrating chickens. Not long after, Yu and his team got a few large sacks of millet from the farmers outside the villa and put them in the small yard in front of the hotel. However, the hotel was now in a mess. There were several large pots in the small yard, and chicken feathers were everywhere. There was no space to dry the millet. In a hurry, Brother Pie and his companions cooked a big pot of chicken soup. Then a few gangsters put the chicken soup in buckets and distributed it to the soldiers who were digging trenches at the entrance of the village. After drinking the chicken soup, the people who stayed in Bafong Villa began the complicated, detailed, and painful work of cleaning the battlefield. Brother Pie's gangsters and Su spent a whole day cleaning every corner of the entire hotel from top to bottom, inside and out. The kitchen, the disaster area, was filled with water by Su and cleaned over and over again. The smell of chicken shoot gradually dissipated, but since people had suffered too much psychological trauma, the kitchen was left empty and useless. After cleaning, Brother Pie and others still set up a stove and a big pot in front of the hotel and started to stomp and fry chicken. Yiyuza and his brothers went to the villa to look for chickens. They were the kind that were too small, mutant chickens the size of a fist without much meat on their bodies. They looked for mutant chickens that were the size of 2 or 3 fists. One of these chickens could feed 2 people, and their offal, chicken feet, and chicken wings were also relatively large. Su's father and mother cleared a small clean area in Xiaoping and were busy drying the millet. A Special Forces soldier was lingering around to protect the millet in Xiaoping, and the chicken stewed in a big pot to prevent some blind chicken thieves from rushing out to rob them. After eating chicken soup, chicken offal, chicken feet, and chicken wings for a whole day, on the second day, Brother Pie and Yu quickly split into 2 groups. One group went to find and kill chickens, and the other group went to Bafong Village outside Bafong Villa to pick vegetables. Why did they go outside Bafong Villa to pick vegetables? Isn't there a vegetable garden inside Bafong Villa? Because the vegetables in that vegetable garden have been eaten up by the mutant chickens that pop up from time to time. The villa is so big, and Su and others only have so few people. Everyone is busy all the time. The mutant chickens are small, and no one can find them if they hide in any corner. Now only Su's mother is responsible for farming. How can she take care of such a large vegetable field alone? What's more, Su's mother has always been focused on her mutant soil and has not paid too much attention to the vegetable field of Bafong Villa. So before Brother Pie and his men could finish killing and plucking the chickens, the vegetable garden was in ruins. The chickens didn't eat all the vegetables in the yard. The remaining leaves and stalks were covered with chicken shoot. If Brother Pie and his men didn't go out to look for vegetables, they would have to eat chicken all day. In fact, before millet was harvested, their staple food was chicken, but with a few vegetable leaves, the taste was adjusted a bit, and it seemed less picky. 2 days passed in a mess, with chickens flying around and people jumping around. There was no pattern or rhythm. During these 2 days, everyone repeated tasks like killing chickens, scalding chickens, plucking their feathers, looking for vegetables, cleaning up chicken droppings, and cleaning the environment. The number of new chicks was controlled at about 30 per day, but the 2 ordinary mutant chickens were never found by Su. Another day passed, and Su felt deeply that this could not go on. Bafong Villa was now suffering from a chicken disaster, and their development rhythm was dragged down by this chicken disaster. Now Pai Ge and Yi's people could not do anything every day. Pai Ji's people could only kill and pluck chickens non-stop, while Yu took his people to wander around the villa and the village, looking for the remnants of chickens left among the people. Although the hotel was cleaned very well, For the purpose of disinfection, Dr. Hong sprayed every corner of the hotel inside and outside with his self-prepared disinfectant and told everyone that they had to wait at least 3 days for his disinfectant to evaporate before arranging for people to move in. So the doors and windows had to be kept open. Since the doors and windows had to be opened, in order to prevent the mutant chickens from going in and causing trouble again, people had to be sent to guard outside the hotel day and night.
It was a very frustrating life.
Being forced to this extent by a chicken was the first time Su encountered such a situation while walking in the apocalypse. In the evening, they had chicken stewed with cabbage. After everyone finished eating with relish, Su called Yiyu, Pai Ge, and Zhuo Shijia together and held a meeting in the RV. She felt that based on the current trend of things, they were completely being led by the mutant chickens. This couldn't go on any longer. In this battle between humans and chickens, humans must take back the initiative. That's true, but how do we take back the initiative as human beings? Yiyu, who was sitting next to Su, was playing with the darts in his hand very seriously. While playing darts, he asked Su, Pai Ge, Zhuo Shijia, and the other two. In the past 2 days, he and his teammates used the mutant chickens in the bushes as objects to practice darts. During the boring days of searching for the remnants of mutant chickens, they passed the time by playing darts and shooting chickens. Brother Pai, who was sitting at the kitchen counter, smiled and said to Yu, I don't know either, but my 2 brothers just said that the soldiers digging trenches at the entrance of Bafong village are very happy to eat chicken for every meal. It is said that in order for us to develop more chicken-related dishes, they took the initiative to hand over several baskets of taro to us. They dug them out when they were digging trenches. They originally wanted to keep them for themselves, but now they think stewing chicken with taro is not bad. So we're going to have chicken and taro stew tomorrow? Zhuo Shijia frowned. She sat opposite Su and looked back at Brother Pai, who was not far behind her. They had been eating chicken or dishes related to chicken for the past 2 days. Zhuo Shijia wanted to eat something light, such as a simple stewed taro. Could she not add the chicken? This is called a combination of meat and vegetables, hee. Brother Pai smiled, but his expression was a little forced. It seemed that plucking chicken feathers recently had caused him to have some nerve problems. When he was free, the word chicken always seemed to be spinning in his mind. He looked at Zhuo Shijia and couldn't help but add, chicken stewed with taro is also delicious. On the sofa, Su opened her mouth, and just as she was asking when the millet that was to be dried in the sun could be threshed, there was a knock on the door of the RV. Brother Pai hurriedly jumped off the kitchen counter and opened the door while silently repeating chicken, chicken, chicken in his head. Standing outside the door was Dr. Hong. Perhaps because he ate chicken every day, Dr. Hong, who was as thin as a telephone pole, now had a greasy face and a slightly plump face. He was wearing a decent white coat and holding a document in his hand. He walked into the RV. Before Su could speak and ask him why he had time to come here, Dr. Hong handed the document in his hand to Su and said seriously, take a look at this.
What?
Su took it and looked at the document in her hand. On the red folder, there were a few strong and powerful words written in pen. Analysis report on Li Xiaoyu's silk. It is probably because after the end of the world, Dr. Hong did not have a printer and he did not have an assistant to help him organize his research results, so he could only write his analysis reports by hand. Dr. Hong is a good person at research, but people who are too focused on research are actually not suitable for writing reports. For example, the analysis report on Li Xiaoyu's sishu in Su's hand. After Su opened it, she saw something like a few pieces of draft paper. Dr. Hong's records were too scattered, and the report was obscure. Su felt dizzy after taking a look at it, so she flipped through it and went straight to the last page to read Dr.
On est summary.
This contains a lot of steroid hormones. What does that mean? Su glanced at a passage in the summary, which probably said that Li Xiaoyu's silk floss, in addition to being tough and durable and fireproof and theft-proof, also contained a large amount of steroid hormones. The summary was too professional and Su didn't understand. Su didn't understand, and Yiyu and Pai Ge were even more confused. Zhuo Shijia leaned over and raised his arm to take the report from Su. That's not all. Dr. Hong sat next to Zhuo Shijia, lowered his head and rubbed his nose, seeming a little tired of dealing with people like Su Su, who didn't even have the most basic knowledge of popular science. He felt tired of talking to these people, but now he had a stable environment to do scientific research, which was all provided by Su Su. So when a research was successful, he had to show his results to his sponsor, so he continued. First of all, the two ordinary mutant chickens. The roosters were castrated, and the hens' ovulation systems were not mature when they mutated. So, when those two chickens were locked up with Li Xiaoyu, they ate her silk wool, and the castrated rooster regained its dignity as a rooster, and the hen's ovulation system matured? Su Su unexpectedly understood what Dr. Hong said. She felt that Li Xiaoyu's ability was simply heaven-shattering. Before the end of the world, it was a supernatural power that made a fortune. So many men couldn't do it, but Li Xiaoyu made them do it. So many women were infertile, but Li Xiaoyu made them pregnant. How could it not be heaven-shattering? By the way, how do you know so much about the first two mutant chickens? The one who raised this question was Xue Shijia. She tilted her head and looked at Dr. Hong with a look of doubt on her face. He even knew whether the rooster had been castrated or not, and whether the hen had matured or not. Dr. Hong smiled and said nonchalantly, "I dissected the two mutant chickens." The ancestor? The ancestor was dissected by you? Su Su's eyes widened, looking at Dr. Hong's nonchalant expression. When did it happen? Yesterday? You caught those two mutant chicken ancestors yesterday? Su Su's voice could not help but rise 8 octaves. She thought to herself, she had been wandering around Bafong Villa for 2 days and couldn't find the two mutant chicken ancestors. However, Dr. Hong was lucky. He not only found the two ancestors, but also caught them for dissection. How did a weak scholar like Dr. Hong catch the two mutant chickens? Su Su thought so, and couldn't help asking. Unexpectedly, Dr. Hong also looked at Su Su with a very strange expression and asked, "Is this difficult? Just use a handful of millet and mix some anesthetic in the millet, and it will be drawn out, right?"
Talent.
Su Su, Yi Yu, and Brother Pai couldn't help but give a thumbs up to Dr. Hong. The three of them secretly sighed that the methods of this highly educated person were so different from those of losers like them. Although Dr. Hong didn't have any special powers, he knew how to use anesthetics. So where did the chicks that kept popping up in Bafong Villa come from today? Su Su couldn't help but have doubts again. Logically, the two ancestors were caught by Dr. Hong yesterday, so there shouldn't be any more chicks being bred today. However, the number of mutant chicks in Bafong Villa today was no less than yesterday. When questioned, Dr. Hong shrugged his shoulders with an expression of "it has nothing to do with me," and said that he didn't know either. Seeing this, Su Su slapped her thigh, turned her head and pulled Yi Yu's arm, and said anxiously, "It's bad. There are more than 2 mutant chicken ancestors in Bafong Villa. The first batch of chickens that were not killed have matured to the point where they can reproduce normally. Then what are you waiting for?" Yi Yu immediately stood up, pinched his knuckles, and looked ferocious. "I'll take some people to search for those hidden chickens." After saying that, Yi Yu immediately got out of the RV and took his brothers to practice darts again. Su Su opened her mouth and watched Yi Yu walk out of the RV door and into the night. After thinking for a while, she looked at Dr. Hong again and asked, "Regarding the fragrance emitted by Li Xiaoyu, it has the effect of making males aroused. Is there any way to suppress it?" "The most convenient and effective way is to use water." Dr. Hong raised his hand and rubbed his nose again, and decided to make it short. "I need Li Xiaoyu's serum and tissue cells so that I can conduct in-depth research." Her serum and tissue cells? Su Su looked at Dr. Hong with some embarrassment. She could not agree to get Li Xiaoyu's serum and tissue cells for Dr. Hong's research. Dr. Hong had taken Li Xiaoyu's blood before, but Li Xiaoyu did not form calluses at that time. He just fainted. Dr. Hong took Li Xiaoyu's blood just for the purpose of knowing whether Li Xiaoyu would turn into a zombie. The purpose of taking blood was normal, and no one could criticize him. But from the perspective of a superpower, one should actually hate some scientific researchers who treat superpowers as some kind of species to study. Isn't there a notorious alien research studio in Qinglong Base? It is said that in those years, some means were used to obtain a batch of superpower serum and tissue cells, and even a lot of money was spent to introduce slices of living superpowers. Of course, the medical value gained behind such a cruel and unpopular scientific research project is immeasurable. Human beings' understanding of this doomsday, their understanding of themselves, and the qualitative leap of human society are all inseparable from this xenomorph research studio. In her previous life, Su almost shut down the studio in a fit of rage. Someone misled her, saying that Xiao AI was sold to this studio for slicing. Fortunately, the misunderstanding was clarified later, but Su has been quite disgusted with the alien research studio ever since. Therefore, Su thought that it would be harmless for Dr. Hong to take 1 or 2 strands of Li Xiuyu's silk for research, and taking blood for testing when Li Xiuyu was unconscious was also for the sake of health. But Li Xiuyu has formed such a big cocoon now. Would it interfere with Li Xiuyu's evolution if he wanted to forcibly break open Li Xiuyu's cocoon and take Li Xiuyu's serum and tissue cells? If Dr. Hong wanted to draw Su's blood now, saying that he wanted to study why Su could freely switch between water and ice, would Su agree? She would definitely not be happy to be studied in this way. Of course, Dr. Hong had drawn Su's blood before, and he had blood samples from Su in his hands, not only Su's, but also Yiyu's. However, Dr. Hong's purpose of drawing blood from both of them was to do a Down syndrome screening test for Xiao AI. With this purpose in mind, Su was happy to let Dr. Hong draw blood. But Li Xiuyu is now wrapped in a big cocoon. She is still evolving. No one knows whether she is happy or not about her blood and tissue cells being extracted for research. So it would be better for Dr. Hong to wait until Li Xiuyu wakes up and then ask her for it himself. This is a respect for Li Xiuyu. Su is not opposed to supporting a scientific researcher like Dr. Hong, but she hopes that the researchers under her can first obtain permission from the researchers before studying other people's blood and tissue cells. She also didn't expect Dr. Hong to research